commissioners, managers, other functionaries of the ministry and its agencies, members of the media, and viewers who've joined us on the various online platforms. I wish you all a very warm good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for this mid-year press conference, where we'll undertake to present you with a comprehensive progress report of the work of the MNR relative to our mandate. As you're aware, the MNR is comprised of 3 agencies, namely the GGMC, the GGB, and the GFC. And today's engagement covers the work of these 3 agencies along with the ministry's 3 programmatic areas. The format of today's session will entail presentations from the agencies, an update of pivotal areas to be provided by the technical officers, and also the presentation of the mid-year presented by Minister Barrett. Then we'll move into the question and answer section, which will be moderated by myself. And then we'll I should be noting also that we've also prepared some written documents that we'll share with members of the media that provides critical information on some of the fiduciary, the fiscals, and other production parameters that will help you in what it is that you've been asking over the last few weeks. With that said, let me wish you a warm welcome again, and I want to begin today's session by inviting Commissioner Newell Dennison to make his remarks.
Thank you, PS. Good afternoon, all. Honorable Minister, I'm sharing a few comments on the Commission and the sector, which may be useful to this event. The Guyana Geology and Mines Commission continues relentlessly in its efforts to bring improvements to the organization and the mining sector, a space shared with our mining and non-mining stakeholders, such as the Guyana Forestry Commission. The Commission has embraced customer quality assurance, such that doing business with the Commission is easier and friendlier, so much so that our customer satisfaction survey for the past half year was at 87%. Reduction in cycle times for tenure application processes, the adoption of self-help kiosks for doing regular transactions, in fact that's been in for quite a while, the decentralization of certain major processes from headquarters to include Bartica, Madia, for such as renewals of the permissions to operate, dredge registration, and in addition, the use of payment methods, for example, the MMG and the EFT platform. That's typically for our vendors. The improved communications with our district stations and weekly open days at headquarters allow to have problems resolved and businesses transacted without always being at headquarters. The Commission recognized that as a regulatory agency, an aspect of how we are judged relates to commodity performances. And I believe that document will be shared at some stage, so I wouldn't go into details on it. We have observed, however, undeniable upward trends in the areas of bauxite, despite the fluctuations for chemical grade, and we have received indications of plans to expand metal grade production. For quarry materials such as aggregates and sand, production has multiplied consistently over the last 3 years, 3 years plus, in response to the infrastructure and housing needs. However, the report on gold has been a media focus due to its modest showings. We must understand that the small and medium-scale operations are working over historically known areas, and that these alluvial near-surface deposits mostly have become depleted. In addition, the sector has been confronted with unprecedented climate-related and other phenomena over the recent years. Everybody would remember the floods, COVID, then drought, and in all of that, some diversion of capital and human resources to other sectors, such as the infrastructure sector, the oil and gas sector, and even agriculture, which is having a resurgence in some instances. Nevertheless, The Commission continues to deploy its resources strategically to foster relations in research for improved technologies to adapt and to adopt and replicate for better, safer mining practices, and the recovery processes that do not utilize mercury and are at some 80+% in recovery. With the interest and investments that prevail, judging from the response to our lotteries, auctions, land allocation, and even applications and locating of claims, along with other requests for permissions to operate, as long as the gold price remains strong, there is expected to be a rebound in the gold performance. Our mining school is one aspect of reinforcing the sector and extending those avenues to communities where there is mining. We found that a number of communities are showing an interest in getting into mining. The Commission is making a huge investment in its commitment to mining infrastructure with assistance to interior road maintenance. We have also been supporting the environmental efforts in reclamation. Employing education, encouragement, and enforcement, the Commission represents very well in maintaining the discipline of environmental stewardship, which involves the paradigm of geological and geochemical exploration, mines inspectorate due diligence during their itinerary of inspections in the field, and broader adoption of drones and satellite coverage to assist in monitoring and verification. And all of this is consistent with our partnerships and conventions. The Commission remains very relevant and central to the sustainability of the mining sector, which is a pivotal pillar of the economic situation in Guyana. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Dennison. We're now going to invite Commissioner of the Guyana Forestry Commission, Mr. Goberdan, for his presentation.
Thank you, Plus. Honorable Minister, heads of agencies, staff, members of the media. The forestry sector is continuing to play an important role in national development, both from an economic point of view and an environmental point of view. Over the years, we have seen significant improvement in the subsector of the forestry in terms of production upgrade. As you would recall, the sector went into a decline, and production declined from a level of about 570,000 in 2014 to around 380,000 in 2016. Over the last 4 years, through direct intervention of the Ministry of Natural Resources, the government, and the GFC, we have managed to bring back the sector to increase production at the end of last year to over 450,000 cubic meters, an increase of nearly 20% over the years. This has came through a lot of interventions through concession issuance at a small, mid-size, and a large-scale level, where over 150 small concessions were issued and 5 large concessions were issued for the sector. And also interventions, investment in roads through Ministry of Natural Resources, GGMC, and other government incentive, duty-free on fuel, machinery, etc. This has helped the sector to regroup and ensure robust production, because over the years we have also seen a rapid increase in utilization of lumber on the domestic market. So production is very key to ensure the sustainability of the sector. And value added is one of the key areas of focus for the government and for the GFC. And over the last 4 years, we have seen significant investment in value-added facilities and some of high-value products being produced, kiln dry lumber, prefab housing, flooring, decking, is all available in the local market and being exported. And as a result, we have seen considerable decline in the exportation of primary products such as logs, and more into value-added, used domestically and exported. We have also been working with over 65 communities and empower them to manage concessions, allocated them over 1.2 million acres of state forests to provide employment for people of the community, and also earn income for members of the community. And we have also invested in value-added facilities in some of these communities, including iTuning, where we have set up a value-added facility to make furniture. We hope to do one in Region 6, Oriella. And through support from the EU, we also hope to do another one in Region 10 and in Region 2. All benefit community livelihood and ensure sustainability of communities in the forestry sector. Some of our major programs we have embarked over the years, and we continue to do so, that strengthen the forest governance and the legality system. One is the EU flag VPA. As you've known, the Minister Barrett had signed this agreement in December 2022, and Parliament had ratified it in the National Assembly in 2023. So we are in the implementation phase of the EU flag VPA process, hoping to have licensing in 2026. We had also signed with the EU a forest partnership agreement, which provides support to the forestry sector, to communities, and also in areas of mangrove conservation and management. And we have also been working closely with the EU in supporting the VPA flag process and also other initiatives through the value chain, value-added, community livelihood through small and mid-sized operation, all in the aim of strengthening the forest governance, ensuring persons living in and around the forest benefit from the resources as well. Concurrently with the EU FEC process, the government embarked on a develop a national system for forest certification through a very extensive stakeholder inclusive process. I'm happy to report that this system was endorsed by PEFC, which is one of the international accreditation body for forest certification. And very soon companies could apply and have their operations certifying using this national system of forest certification. The GFC also continued to work with the Office of Climate Change, the LCDS Secretariat, in continuing the monitoring, report, and verification system, which allows reporting on land use change over a calendar year. And through robust forest monitoring systems, we have ensured very low levels of deforestation and illegal logging through the production and supply chain. Together with GGMC, the Ministry of Natural Resources, we have also embarked on a land reclamation project through support from the government of Guyana. And we have already established a site at Linden. Some of the media have already visited that site, where we do the pilot reclamation in mined out area using native species, about 10 native species. We also hope to extend this project in Region 8 and Region 1. And we also have embarked on rehabilitation of degraded areas in Region 10 and Region 6. We have also completed a national forest inventory system, which is a macro level inventory of the state forests to gather information on the resource capacity of the sector, so that when we have more informed information on species utilization. And we have also working with the subsector, the value-added for subsector, in broadening the range of species being utilized. Because a lot of the small concessions, they are not privy to the prime species, so the prefab housing, etc., using a lot of the non-traditional species. And so it's market opportunity for a lot more species rather than the green heart and purple heart. We have also launched a revolving fund about a year and a half ago, and stakeholders in the sectors already benefit from this fund. Together with Ministry of Natural Resources, we have maintained close partnership with the international community, because in partnership with the international community, we able to ensure sustainable forestry management, strengthen robust system of forest management, and we have had good support from the EU flag process, supporting the EU flag, also digital IT system, supporting sustainable livelihood at a community level along with WWF. Also the British, UK has been supporting forest governance activities. FAO and EU is also looking supporting value-added and value chain systems. And we continue to partnership with Norway, CI, and other international partners with the hope of continue to strengthen the forest monitoring system, the legality system, to ensure a robust forest management system. So thank you. This is a brief on some of the activities that the Forestry Commission has been engaging over the past year.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Dennison. Sorry, Commissioner Gobadan. I called Mr. Dennison name 3 times a day, every few minutes. So, ladies and gentlemen, as per Minister's policy guidance relating to transparency and accountability, whilst improving the decision-making at all levels, the Ministry of Natural Resources is actually pleased to launch our mineral mapping, resource allocation map, and our forestry resource allocation map. Both of these are available now to the public at no cost on the platform. And these 2 resource materials were done in collaboration with the engagement and support of the U.S. government, in particular the Cadastre Foundation. And together they will significantly improve management of the sector. I'm going to invite Mr. Omkar Lochan, who is the head of the policy, plan, and coordination of the ministry, to essentially take us through a virtual presentation of both platforms. Mr. Lochan?
Thank you, PS. All protocols observed. So, PS would have mentioned Cadastre. Just before I get started, a brief of what Cadastre is. It's a global nonprofit that offers tools and technologies where governments, organizations could use their GIS or geospatial data to do analysis, storage, and things like that. Yeah. And if you don't know as well too, the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission, the Guyana Forestry Commission, are the greatest creators and users of geospatial data in Guyana. What this platform allows us to do as well too is to share data with other agencies. And as you will see from my presentation, there are data from several agencies that's here. So we could start with the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission. Now, both commissions, you can find this platform on their website. Just Google or ggmc.gov.gy. For the GGMC, it's under the mineral tenure tab. Now this takes you to the Cadastre platform. Again, it's found on the website. Anyone could access it. I'm hoping that I really want to show you this live, so I'm hoping that the internet cooperates with me. Other than that, we'll have to use a PowerPoint. So this is live. This is on the website as we speak right now. Right. So brings you to a zoomed out image of the map of Guyana. Based on the data types, they will be available at different zoom levels. So at the higher end of the zoom, you'll see the larger data types. I think this here shows our protected areas and as well as the mining districts. Right? Now you could zoom in on this map. As you zoom in, you get to the mineral properties. All right? So these, for a particular, if you could zoom out just a bit, these are mineral properties in a particular part of Guyana or mineral mining district. Right? Each of these polygons represents a property. Right? One of the cool things about this map, it allows you to search as well too. So I could search. Let's look at CBR Mining Company. So as you type it in, all of the properties with that sort of name, that starts with that name will pop up. So that number that you see there is the property number. It's a unique number to each mineral property that's allocated. Right? And so each data point has attributes as well too. You'll see the file number, you'll see the applicant, the application date, the type of the permit, which is a prospecting permit medium scale, and the acreage. So it is searchable, and you could search by large scale and medium scale as well too. Unfortunately, the small scale or the claims are not on this map, but persons could go into the GGMC and request that. Search for something. So let's do a large scale. All right, so the tabs are raised. I mean, it's easy to use. Right, so let's look at this one, V17. Let's zoom in. So as you search, you see this is the property. It's highlighted in a different color. If I zoom out a bit, you could see it in context with the surrounding properties, natural features like rivers. Right. The other thing that you could do with this map is select layers. And that's where our collaboration with other agencies are very important. We have, that's accessed from this map, all of our protected areas. There are also Amerindian titled lands. So if you select, let's probably do an Amerindian titled area, say Batavia. All right. Batavia, region 7. Let's zoom in. So the area in blue would be the Batavia Amerindian area. And you could see in relation to that area, mining concessions that are around, right? You could also see buffer zones. So you could lay this map with Amerindian areas, not only Batavia, you could overlay it. You could lay it with our roads network as well too. I'll show you in a brief bit. And all of the other layers that we have here. If, last thing, PS want me to show you the quarries, we could go to the quarry selection. Now we don't have a lot of quarries there. It's not spaced, so it's in a particular geographic location. You could probably look at the Metallica. Again, too, you could use the search feature and search for these if you know the name or you know the property number. Right? And it brings up, and it's shaded differently as well, gives you the acreage. And as you can see, we have some PPMS around there. So pretty much this, not going into anything very technical, what's available on the GGMC's website right now, accessible by anybody. You could download some of these features, some of these in PDFs as well. Once you're able to maneuver around, you could play around with it. I could go quickly now to Forestry, which is built the same way. Access through the Guyana Forestry Commission's website. Forest allocation tab goes to the map. I'll just briefly show you three things here. Example of a large concession. Similar, as you look at it, it's a wide zoom, so you need to zoom in. So we could search for a concession. What it's showing here, it's all of the forestations. Not only, we started using this for internal operations, where we could look at where our stations are and for operations in the field. That was one of the main usage. Here are the layers again, where you could add or remove layers. So we're just going to look at large concessions. Unfortunately, they're all in the same color, which we'll have to change. If we go to probably Maserati, it's a big one. And that's a shapefile or a polygon of the Maserati concession. If you zoom out, you'll see it relative to other areas, right? The other thing that's on this map is the sawmills and the lumber yards. So not only for the media, but if anybody is looking for a specific sawmill or lumber yard, they could go to this map. I see the layers are here. And you could add and remove layers as you see fit. Mind you, if you put more layers on, the map gets a bit more complex. A list as of a few days ago of lumber yards and sawmills in Guyana. So we could probably, and if you, the attributes here as well too, you have the address, contact number, if you need to contact them. You could click on one. If you click on one, this is who? Bibi Ali. This is West Coast Berbice. It's a lumber yard. Lot 4, Dundee, Maikoni. Yeah, so that's available on the map as well. You can see all the lumber yards. Last thing I want to show you, and it's applicable to both maps. It's more on the operational side. It's the road network. I'll show you right on this GFC map, but it's on the GGMC map as well too. So this is our national road network. It includes trails as well, not only asphalt roads, but trails. And one of the things that we use this data for is that when we are allocating, whether it's through a lottery auction, new land, we could actually look at our map and see where infrastructural developments in terms of roads would be needed. And then we would budget for that. All right, I think that's it. Please feel free to log on and play around, and there are contacts there in case you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lochan. As I mentioned before, both resource maps are available on the respective websites, free of cost. And more importantly, what you see there is the combination of at least 3 to 4 years of intensive work. And there's a lot of back-end work that is being done to actually get you to that live stage. And it's open for everyone, all right? Everyone could go, you could check anything you want, it's all there. On that same note, I should mention that as part of the ministry's mandate, we work with other regulatory agencies and petroleum operators to proactively monitor petroleum activities, including seismic work, drilling, and production. The use of a suite of cutting-edge technological packages allows the MNR to employ real-time access to monitor all aspects of the activities. One such platform is the production dashboard, which is pivotal as part of the tools that we use. I'm going to invite Mr. Trent Perlal and Ms. Marissa Foster-Gordon, who are the co-leads on the petroleum technical team, to essentially give us a presentation in terms of the monitoring activities. And whilst both officers come up here, I'll just probably take the liberty of mentioning very quickly some of the other technical packages we use. There is the Petrel, there is the PTEX, there is the Genesis, There's a question and advantage. And I'll stop here. Trent, ready? No, you can go right ahead. You can go right ahead.
Hello. Hi. Good afternoon, everyone. So this afternoon, myself and my colleague, Miss Marissa Foster Garden, will be providing an overview or an insight into the real-time production monitoring system that we have in place or that the government has access to. So just point. So real-time production monitoring is one of the many mechanisms that are in place for production oversight. This slide shows the various mechanisms that are in place. So I'll just briefly touch on a few of these mechanisms. So firstly, the operator being the oil company, ExxonMobil. The operator is required to submit the facilities metering design to the government for approval. And then the next important mechanism here is the calibration of fiscal meters. Now, the government's designated agency for doing this is the GNBS, and the standard that they follow is the API standard. Then we have a terminal, so they're responsible for crude lifting entitlement and for ensuring that the requisite procedures are followed for when a tanker is approaching the FPSO for offloading. And then the fourth one I have here, it's the GNBS's presence on each FPSO during offloading. We also have third-party inspection during offloading. So you might ask, why third-party inspection when you also have the GNBS? Now, the third-party inspection is very important because as a buyer of Guyana's crude, you would want to know what exactly it is in the incoming cargo tanker. So if a tanker is coming to be filled at the FPSO, the buyer would need to ensure that if it's a 2 million barrel capacity tanker is approaching the FPSO and it's already filled with 1 million barrel, the third-party inspector would go through that and ensure that the cargo entering Guyana water is exactly what they said it is. And another important part of the third-party inspection is that they also look at the temperature and volume of the crude that is entering the vessel. We'll touch later on in the presentation, we'll touch on the real-time production monitoring. Just to highlight here too that we also have access to the Maxar software that PS mentioned. It's satellite imagery software, so the EPA has access to this, and they are able to see if there are spills offshore Guyana. We also have MARAD's involvement. So when any vessel is entering or leaving Guyana water, the MARAD is responsible for monitoring this, especially tankers entering for offloading. And then we also have the captain's verification. So each cargo tanker that enters that is being filled from our FPSOs, the captain of these tankers need to ensure that the correct volume goes into the tanks of the tankers, and also what is critical for them is the temperature and volume. So a brief example of that is if you offload 1 million barrels of oil in Guyana, the temperature and volume here, due to expansion factors, if you go up north where the temperature is cooler, you can have a temperature, a volume difference due to temperature and volume. So this is important for the captain, and it's also important for the buyer of the crude. We also have GRA's authorization. So each FPSO, as you all know, they're called a bounded warehouse. So anything entering those FPSO or leaving those FPSO, they require GRA's authorization. And from our day-to-day activity at the MNR, GGMC, EPA, etc., we are involved in weekly and monthly meetings with the operator. And the operator is also required to submit daily and monthly production reporting. And we also have audits here. So this also includes production audits. So a little bit more on the real-time production monitoring. I'll just go through this now. So I'll just provide you guys with some context and some background on the real-time access. So ExxonMobil has requested the government's approval to install a fiber optic cable for real-time production monitoring. The use of a fiber optic cable is necessary due to the large volume of data generated from the FPSO and subsea equipment. So, and they also took into consideration the development of future projects. This request was made around 2021. So the government granted approval for the fiber optic cable on the condition that that the government must also have real-time access to the data transmitted through the cable. I'd like to also mention here that apart from that condition, in the Yellowtail Petroleum Production License going forward, we also included condition where the licensee is required to provide the government with real-time access. So if those licenses are public, if you go to Yellowtail, Yaru, Whiptail, etc., you will find the condition there that require them to give the government real-time access to production data. Let me go to the next. Okay, so the MNR, as I mentioned before, the government has access to the real-time production data, and it was since February 2022 that we've been monitoring Liza Phase 1 in real time. Liza Phase 2 and Payara became available shortly after commissioning, and when Yellowtail, Yaru, Whiptail, etc. After they're commissioned, the same will follow for them. So we will be able to monitor those FPSOs as well, the production activity from them in real time. The data from the instruments on board each asset is transmitted from offshore to onshore via the fiber optic cable. And it's important to mention here that the data updates automatically on the dashboard every 10 minutes without human interaction. Now, earlier I mentioned the vast volume of data coming into that cable. You need to take into consideration that 10 minutes may seem a little long, but it's actually not, because it's a large quantity of data, and the numbers requires crunching before you can see something meaningful on the dashboard. I would like to emphasize here that the regulators being the government, possess the authority to request adjustments, either increasing or decreasing the amount of real-time data available on these platforms. So that goes for all three vessels that's currently under production. I'll now hand it over to my colleague, Ms. Marissa Foster-Garden, and she'll walk you through the dashboard. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thanks, Trent. So when our officers from the MNR, the GGMC sign in to the dashboard, this here is what they see. This is like the home screen. And they're able to access each tab, which gives us different information. So I thought rather than go through the text and the following slides, we'll just discuss it here using this image. With the production tab, they're able to see the actual real-time production figures and also compare it with the prior day's reporting. I have a screenshot of that, which I'll share shortly. And we also have a tab on tank inventories, which also allows us to see the quantities going into each tank in real time. The seawater tab allows us to monitor the seawater that's being re-injected, as well as the volumes that we have in the tanks, the temperature, the pressures, the pump status. The gas tab allows us to monitor our gas injection equipment and the gas injection wells, while the downtime tab focuses more on the status of any downtime equipment and the effect that it may have on the production in any given moment. Our power generation tab focuses on the output of the gas turbine generators and their current operational status. So if it's down, how many hours it's been down, that kind of information. And also the status of our emergency diesel generators. So currently the FPSOs, they run on gas that's being produced from the field. So if there is any issue with those gas turbines, we have the emergency backup diesel generators. The SHE page keeps a record of the incidents to date, which is more of a summary feature and does not take away from the detailed reporting that's required to the EPA and to the Ministry and the GGMC. And it also keeps a record of the environmental parameters of the produced water that's being discharged each day. Our flare management tab keeps record of the flare volumes for both our low and high pressure flare stacks. And lastly, the produced water monitors the equipment status that is responsible for processing our produced water from the facilities, and the volume of treated and discharged produced water as well. So yes, text here is what I just went through. So I'm just going to have a brief look at the production data tab. And as it says here, it includes all of the volumes processed from the major topside equipment. So unfortunately, we can't do this in real time. So we had to take a screenshot, and because we had to reduce it for the slide, we lost a little bit of the legibility. But essentially, these tables update in real time. So when Trent mentioned that it updates every 10 minutes without human interaction, these are where the figures are being updated. It says Destiny at the top here, but we have a separate production portal for each production facility. And so here the officers are able to see the gross and net oil being produced off of each separator and our electrostatic treater, for instance. And at the bottom, it gives the previous day's information, including all the reported pressures and temperatures. And to the right here is our real-time information, a summary of the real-time information for that particular day. And here, another critical page, this is our cargo tank inventories. Each section represents a different cargo tank on the vessel. And so it shows us to the top. Also, yeah, the text here is not clear either, but it shows what it calls the closing volume at the top and the prior day's volume to the bottom. It has the gross figure, the percentage of sediment and water that's generated from the vessel, and when you subtract that from the gross, what we have left is our net produced volumes. So these are two critical components of our production dashboard, and as Trent highlighted, these are further bolstered by our weekly and monthly operating meetings and our daily and monthly production reports. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Trent and Marissa, for providing that comprehensive oversight. As I mentioned before, it's real-time information. I just wanted to touch on two quick points to add to what Trent mentioned. In addition to the GNBS, we also have the GRA that is there when any cargo has to be moved, right? Without them, the cargo cannot be offloaded. Also, I wanted to be very pellucid in the fact that the third-party inspector is another layer, as Trent pointed out, that is also recruited by each lifter, including the government. So notwithstanding the fact that we have the GRA and the GNBS, we also hire an international third party for every single lift that is occurring. And I also wanted to finally touch on the point is that the flow chart that Trent and Marissa highlighted, it covers steps, but essentially being done by multiple persons. That is to say, there is the regulator, within this instance, the Ministry and the GNBS, MARD, and so, the EPA. There's also the buyer of the crude, which does go through the same steps. There's a seller of the crude, which essentially have their interests represented. There is the terminal, and then there is the operator. And every single one of these entities represented actually go through a host of steps that essentially Trent pointed out. So in other words, every single body's report has to mesh before we can move forward. So it was not one person report. It's roughly 5 different reports in addition to the various production information. And in case you're wondering why is it with the real-time production information we don't issue it on a daily report basis, is because you have to allow for these various entities to essentially collate and do the analysis before the monthly production report is actually issued. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, I want to move into the other aspect of the ministry's petroleum program, and that is the local content secretariat, which has been providing pivotal support towards the development of the petroleum industry. To do that, I'm going to invite Dr. Martin Patab, the Director of the Local Content Secretariat, to present you with his report. Dr. Patab?
Thank you very much, PS. All protocols observed. I will just provide a brief update on what we have been working so far at the Local Content Secretariat. Over the past 6 months, significant stride has been made in addressing some of the underlying challenges, and I guess this was well vented in the media as it relates to front-end and payments, late payments. When we started off in 2022, average payment period was somewhere around 3 to 6 months, and today that payment period had reduced to 35 to 45 days. And as of now, we're in discussion with some of the major tier 1 companies, including the contractor, to have that payment period revised some more down to 21 days. We've been having a close working relationship with some of the major stakeholders, including the Private Sector Commission, GCCI, and other agencies. The whole intent, of course, is for us to discuss policy direction going forward, looking at some of the challenges that some of the local companies have been faced with as it relates to doing business under the local content law, and of course to provide updates on how things have been progressing at the Local Content Secretariat. So far, we have received several recommendations from these stakeholders, and we're in the process now of revising those recommendations. One, of course, is what we're referring to is pipe coating. As of now, we're in discussion with some of the tier 1 companies that deals directly with this particular service, and the concern is the high energy cost. And we all know with the advent of the gas energy project, once we can bring down the energy cost by 50%, pipe coating services is something that is highly possible and would likely be done in Guyana, which would likely boost local content activities in Guyana by somewhere around 10%. We have also ramped up our M&E program, which has to do with compliance with local content law and capacity building by local companies. For instance, we have reached out to some of the local companies. One is providing machine and fabrication services, and following our engagement and discussion with that company, we have realized that the capacity has increased quite significantly over the past year. And now the company has moved from providing basic threading services to now having the capacity to provide premium downhole drilling accessories, manufacturing of these accessories, such as crossover pop joints, landing joints, blast joints, etc. In fact, just recently, they have received a major purchase order following our engagement with the contractor and some of the subcontractors that we would want to see these services being prioritized, not part of the first schedule of the Act. And that company has received a major purchase order to now manufacture those key components. As it relates to shipping, we have seen Guyanese companies that are now offering SPV and subsea services, and we are working with the relevant companies who would require those services so as to prioritize local companies, of course, to provide those subsea services. We have also been making strides as it relates to small and medium-sized enterprises, women-owned businesses. So far, within the first 6 months, 54 new companies, women-owned businesses are registered with us. And in areas such as catering, accommodation, food supply, janitorial. I think just a month ago, a female-owned company won a major contract with one of the tier 1 companies, and immediately she had to move from having 3 staff to 40 staff. And that was something, of course, based on our engagement with the companies, because we have made it clear that we would want to see small and medium-sized companies getting a fair share of the pie as well. And that is one of the commitments that they had to include in their annual plan before approval could have been granted. We have also seen custom brokerage companies. Now, 100% owned, or if you want to refer to them as indigenous companies, now providing custom brokerage services. Medical services also being provided by 100% owned Guyanese, things that were unheard of just a year or so ago. And of course, this has been because of our engagement with the companies to ensure that they prioritize local companies. Of course, you would all agree that the degree of local content is much more among indigenous-owned companies rather than joint venture, while of course we all consider them as local companies. We have been working on the mobile app. I know they've received quite a lot of attention, and we're hoping to have it finalized by the end of this year. And as of now, we are working on the interface to ensure that it's user-friendly and could be by the public in general. We have also done some work on the paid internship program. I know at the beginning of this year, we would have indicated that we are working with 100 students to basically place them among some of the major tier 1 companies to work alongside experts that would help upskill their skills. So of course, have offset some of the demand in the petroleum sector. To date, we have received placement for 53 among several tier 1 companies, with commitment being provided of having the remaining employed or work alongside these companies by the end of the year. Some of the technical institutes we have worked with included GTI, Linden Technical Institute, and Beena Hill Institute. Just a quick update on our half year. As mandated under the Local Content Act, companies are required to submit those half-year reports. And those half-year reports, while of course we're still assessing, I think it would be worthwhile to share some of the preliminary findings. As of June 30th of this year, expenditure among the related sectors, somewhere around 314 million, or 54% of the 2024 projected estimate. When compared to mid-year of 2023, we have seen growth in areas such as engineering and machine services by 238%. We have seen growth in accommodation services by 39%. We have seen growth in equipment rental by 48.5%, and even catering by 18.8%. This, of course, would have resulted from the increase in petroleum activities due to the arrival of the third FPSO. As it relates to employment, following the submission of 40 major tier 1 companies and a contractor, we have seen new hires within the first 6 months increase to 454, which represents 57.6% of this year's target. While of course the total employment, which has now moved to 4,467 for 40 tier 1 companies, if we look across all tier 1, tier 2, and even the contractor, the estimate is somewhere around 6,500, or represents 65% employment of total employment. Capacity building, we have also seen stride as it relates to capacity building. So far, within the first 6 months, some of the major tier 1 companies have invested over $3.8 million, with 14 individuals receiving scholarship amounting to somewhere around 525,000 USD. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Patab, for that presentation. Another aspects of the ministry's work involve the fiscal management as it relates to the regulatory regime in which we operate. So I'll ask Mr. Bobby Gosai to make a brief presentation, essentially on some of the fiscal matters, and then we'll go into the presentation by Minister Barrett. Ladies and gentlemen, just for clarity, and forgive me if I wasn't clear, we have refreshments and so at the back in case anyone wants to partake. Okay? Thank you. Bobby?
Thank you, PS. Ministers, members of the head table, members of the media, those joining us online. We wanted to focus on this side of the presentation a little bit on the key issues that have been debated from time to time as it relates to the fiscal management of the sector. But before we get there, it is important that we remind ourselves of where we come from and where we are now and where we're headed. So as of right now, on average for this year, we will see Guyana producing about 650,000 barrels of oil per day from the 3 production platforms that are out there. Of course, we know the gas energy project is moving ahead. We have Yellowtail coming in 2025, followed by Warroad, then Whiptail, and then Hammerhead, which will eventually put us over that 1.3 to 1.5 million barrels of oil per day. But how do we get there in terms of what has been happening? You listen to Trent talk about the monitoring, you talk about Marissa indicate how we are looking at the real-time activities, and of course the benefit to the economy as Martin would have outlined. But if we look at this trend here, this graph, you can see the upward projection of our ramped up production that we're having. And this eventually will put us over that 500 million barrels of oil to be produced by December of 2024, which says a lot in terms of the ways in which we are managing effectively to move from first oil in December 2019 to the development of the 3 production platforms and producing towards December of 2024. But there are 5 key things we wanted to show you and discuss with you this afternoon at this press conference. One of it is the interest rates, the application of interest rates on the Stabroek Coast Bank, on the Stabroek operation. Currently, there is no interest that is charged on the operation of the Stabroek block right now, whether that is development or production activities. Within Annex C, as is a public document, everyone can go there, they can see that the COVs, the Stabroek partners, are entitled to charge an interest, and that interest, of course, is cost recoverable. Currently, that is not happening. The operations can be financed through debt financing or bank loans. In this case, as the Stabroek block is being developed, it's happening through equity investment and the inflows from profitability that is coming from the operation of the Stabroek block. So again, the COVs are not charging any interest at this point in time on the operation of the Stabroek block. There might be some interest in terms of the FPSO from SBM and other contractors, but not directly onto the Stabroek partners. The other factor which we wanted to talk about this afternoon is decommissioning costs. Decommissioning is something that is within the license, with every license that you would see. The minister will speak more about this as we go through this press conference, but decommissioning, if you look at every of the licenses that have been placed from Lisa 1 all the way to Warrior, you would see there's something called a decommissioning security agreement. And with the Whiptail development, because of the new Petroleum Activities Act that we put in place in August last year, you would know that we are working towards the establishment of a decommissioning fund and all of the factors that deal with the management of that fund and the operation when the economic life of each field come to an end. But importantly, you must understand there are 3 factors that the government of Guyana has great oversight when it comes to the determination of decommissioning, and that has to do with the work program and budget, the abandonment cost that is included in the field development plan that must come to the government of Guyana to be reviewed and approved, as well as the enhanced or the estimated ultimate recoverable resource that is in place within the basin, as this is a block, as we all know, and then of course the production activities must be verified by the government of Guyana every single month. And for those of you who are often questioned why we are not having the same month production activities in place, this is one of the reasons why. So today is the 14th, by tomorrow is the 15th, we should get July production report, and then the report will either be up either by Friday or Monday of the following week. The other factor we wanted to bring to your attention is profitability. Profitability from the PSA, and in terms of how it is determined within the PSA. There is no other determination of profit as it comes to the calculation of the cost bank as it determines the royalty that is paid or the profit oil that comes to the government of Guyana. It is outlined within the PSA. There are reporting mechanisms that a company themselves have to work on for their own accounting purposes, which is the International Financial Reporting Standards, the accounting procedures within there. But for the purposes of clarity here, the PSA governs the way in which we receive our profit oil and the ways in which the royalties is determined, and that is the volume of revenue sales, you take out the cost recovery, of course royalties are taken out there, and then the profit share 50-50. We're all very familiar with this, but we just wanted to repeat the distinction between the two, while the FRS system is different from the PSA system. That the FRS system will take into account other factors as it relates to the accruals principle in accounting. We also wanted to bring to the attention royalties. It is very clear within Article 15.6 how royalties are calculated, and as I've highlighted here, it is 2% of all petroleum produced less any quantity of petroleum that is used for operation from the licensing area or from the field. In our case, we have a Stabroek license, and there are 3 producing fields, as we all know, Lisa 1, Lisa 2, and Payara. And that is where we get our royalty from. And to give you a further breakdown, again, it is less the quantities of petroleum used for fuel or transportation in petroleum operation times the value of the average price. There are 3 production platforms. I repeat that again, 3 production platforms. So obviously we will have to use a weighted average price to determine what can be the valuation of that petroleum that is produced and that petroleum that is sold to determine royalty calculations from the Stabroek partners. The government of Guyana is an entitled partner to the Stabroek block. Hence, we receive our share of profit oil, but we are not included in that determination. Following on from that, we wanted to talk a little bit about the revenue inflows. As it has been announced, and we are doing this 3 times now, other than the first one, which was done with Shell, we have 2 marketing companies in place, BB Energy and JE Energy. We receive a premium on our price. The premium on every lift that is sold, we receive a premium, and those premium are indicated here. We get 26 cents on the dollar from BB Energy, and we get 70 cents on the dollar from JE Energy. Of course, this is factored into the total net back price. Some of you who might be familiar with this, you know that the Liza crude and our crude, the Guyana crude, I should say, is pegged to the dated Brent, which is the international benchmarking, and that can be seen or reported every single day through the Platts crude market wire. That's also set out in the PSA, and the government of Guyana is subscribed to that so that we know the price of our crude every single day that is sold on the international market. So when it comes to the verification of those prices through the Stabroek partners, we can also determine whether the price that they're selling at is a fair market price or it is not a fair market price. Hence, we have to do various verifications of the prices to determine the overall value of our royalties that we receive every quarter. It is calculated every month, but we receive it every quarter as per the agreement that we have in place. And of course, Trent would have mentioned this in a broader sense. Every activity for crude lifting and crude trading is defined within what is called a crude lifting agreement, and that agreement is the government of Guyana and the operator of the Stabroek block, as well as the COVIs. And of course, that's the 5 areas in which we wanted to highlight to you of where we are coming from as it relates to the fiscal operation of the activities within the Stabroek block. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gosai, for providing a brief oversight on the fiscal management and some of the topical issues. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now my pleasure to introduce you to Minister Vikram Bharat, who essentially will take the rest of the press conference from this standpoint. Minister Bharat.
Thank you, PS, and good afternoon, everyone. First of all, let me thank the officers who made presentations this afternoon. We heard from the head of the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission, from the Guyana Forestry Commission, the head of the Local Content Secretariat, head of finance, and also from the technical teams. I know it's a lot of information. We are also willing to share the information with you because I know it's a lot to digest in a short period of time. But being cognizant of your time too, we try to summarize some of those presentations. I know it's a lot of information, and at this press conference, we want to ensure that we share as much information as possible with you from the natural resources sector. I know many media houses have been calling for this press conference and for the sharing of more information. But as you know, the Ministry of Natural Resources is not only monitoring the oil and gas sector, but also forestry and mining. These 2 sectors, I must add, play a key role in our economy. Mining is the 2nd highest contributor to our GDP. It used to be number 1 before oil and gas. So mining still play a key role in our economy and the development of our country. Forestry and mining put together employs over 50,000 Guyanese, whether directly or indirectly. That is how important these 2 sectors are, besides from the number of other benefits that comes from it as a country. So it is critical and important that as a government and as a ministry, we continue to pay emphasis on these two important sectors and also continue to expand and provide incentives to the mining and the forestry sector as well, taking into consideration the conversation that is resonating around the world with regards to climate change, cutting emission, conservation and preservation of our forests. And I want to say that as a government and as a ministry, our policy is clear. Our policy is economic development with environmental sustainability. That has always been our policy, and it will continue to be so. We are going to balance the economic development, that is to ensure that our people enjoy a better life, and at the same time adhere to our responsibilities with regards to our environmental credentials and mostly keeping our forests standing. And I want to start with exactly that, because we don't see a lot being mentioned, whether it's nationally or internationally, of our forests. Our forest is a national treasure, and it is something that as all Guyanese we must be proud of, especially with the issue of climate change being almost the #1 issue being discussed worldwide. Guyana's forests, and I think many of us know, but we don't say it a lot, we don't publish it a lot, but I think we should. Guyana's forest is the size of the United Kingdom. That is the size of our forests. It can hold 19.5 gigatons of carbon. Every year or on an annual basis, it removes over 154 million tons of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, making Guyana one of the few carbon sink countries in the world. And many times when you go to international conferences, there are countries making commitment. There are countries making commitment to being a carbon sink or reducing emission. Guyana, as of today, is a carbon sink. As a matter of fact, we are in the negative. Our forests can trap way more carbon dioxide that we produce in Guyana. And even when we have 10 FPSOs offshore, even when we move to an expansion in our manufacturing industrial sector stemming from the Wales gas to energy development, Guyana will still remain a carbon sink country. And that is something that all Guyana, regardless of where we sit, regardless of our position, that as Guyanese, we should be proud of that, because that by itself is an achievement. We are probably one of few oil-producing countries that can boast of being a carbon sink in this world today. One of the few oil-producing countries in the world. So that is something I think we need to highlight a little more, and it's something that as Guyanese we should be proud of. The Guyana Forestry Commission, I must say, has been doing an excellent job in managing our forests. Today we can boast, even though we have a vibrant forestry sector, we can boast that we have one of the lowest deforestation rates in the world. Our commitment in the Low Carbon Development Strategy 2030 speaks to 0.07% deforestation. Today we are way below that. We are way below our own targets in the Low Carbon Development Strategy. Maybe our only rival is probably Gabon, and I think we are very close to overtaking Gabon too, with the world's lowest deforestation rate, even though we have a vibrant forestry sector. And that is something else that we must be proud of too. The Guyana Forestry Commission has been on a task to ensure that we keep the sector alive, that we keep the forestry sector as being a lucrative sector, that we expand our operations, that we attract more people to the forestry sector, while at the same time taking into consideration that the forest is important to us. And how are we doing that? The Commissioner spoke of value added. And we have seen over the last 3 to 4 years an increase in value-added products in the forestry sector. Just look at the housing project, for example. That is a success story by itself. Guyana, as a model forestry country, producing these wooden homes for export to Caribbean islands and elsewhere. That by itself is a success story for the forestry sector. Today we have stakeholders who have answered the call and are engaged in coals production. I know we have been doing this for a very long time, and when you drive down the highway, you will see these package of coal selling on the roadway. We wanted to take it beyond that. We want it to be packaged properly. We want it in different sizes so people can have options. We want them to be placed in supermarkets and malls so that people can purchase it there too. And I think it's Mr. Bino and a group from the highway, a women's group from the highway, has taken on the task of investing in this area, and we are already seeing a success in that. They're supported, of course, by the Guyana Forestry Commission, because from day one, we said that we are going to move towards value added, and we are going to look at ways to utilize wood waste. And that is one way of utilizing wood waste. We have a few landscaping companies in Guyana now that are engaged in the making of mulch, that is the chips, and that is another way of utilizing wood waste. We also said that in the forestry sector, for it to be more viable, we have to increase the recovery rate of each log. When we took over, the recovery rate was about 35–40% maximum. Today, many of the sawmills, many of the operation and stakeholders have retooled and recapitalized, so much so that we have a few of the larger operators recovering almost 70–75% of each log. And that is a significant stride and achievement. And we are working with the others to ensure that their recovery rate too can increase so there is less wastage, while at the same time looking at ways to utilize that. What we have seen over the last few years is almost, I think it's over 100 new sawmills in our country. Almost 100 new sawmills in our country, over 50 new lumber yards establishing throughout the country. Linden by itself alone, I think Minister Indar mentioned it on an interview recently or in Parliament, that Linden had 5 sawmills in 2020. Today we have about 19 sawmills in Linden operating at present. So we have seen more and more people coming into the sector, but not only coming into the sector, but venturing into value-added downstream activities. And we will see much more of that when the gas energy project comes online, because from that project, you know, we will cut the electricity cost by 50%, and we will have more reliable electricity. Because you ask many sawmillers, why is it that you don't venture into more value added? It is the cost of electricity as a hindrance to them. So once we have the gas energy project on stream, it simply means that more of our stakeholders will move towards value added and to reduce the exploitation of wrong wood or logs. However, we have already seen, even though our production at the forestry sector has increased over the last 4 years, and we are poised in 2024 to produce our target and to pass the 2023 production. What we have seen is a reduction in the exploitation of logs, which is a good sign. It simply means more of our products are being sold on the local market, mainly because of the great demand created by the housing sector, the oil and gas sector, and all the developments that are taking place throughout our country. So it means more demand locally, and that is good for the sector and our local economy. I just want to add to on the forestry sector that what we would have completed last year, the National Forest Inventory, is something that will add to the way in which the forestry sector is managed and in the allocation of forestry concessions. Similarly, when I get to GGMC, I will tell you about the mineral inventory that we are embarking on, which will also help with the allocation too. Now, the other big project that we are doing at the forestry sector, and was mentioned, is the land reclamation reforestation project. It is a costly venture, but it is a necessary venture. There are many mined-out areas, especially in the bauxite belt, that we are currently working to do reclamation and reforestation. There's a pilot project in the Linden area, for example, where we have planted over 2,500 trees already, spanning about 20 to 30 acres. That is a project that's already started, and it will continue to expand into the bauxite mined-out areas. It is being replicated in other areas in Region 10, Region 1, Region 6, and Region 8 around the Madhya Township area. So that is another big undertaking by the forestry sector and the Ministry of Natural Resources that we wanted to highlight. Finally, on the forestry sector, I would like to thank our international partners for the support that we've been getting from them, technical, financial, and other support that we've been receiving to ensure that the conservation and the preservation of our forests is paramount, while working with us to reduce deforestation, but keeping the sector viable through value added. And in that project, we have already realized furniture making factory in Aichuni. Today, the residents in Aichuni are benefiting from that factory and from contracts making school furniture. We're doing a similar project in the Oriala Sepruta area. We will do one in Region 2 and one in the Kokwani area as well through the assistance from the EU, the Sustainable Livelihood Project. We are also been working with the Forestry Commission and the EU on the mangrove restoration and protection project, and already we are seeing the results of that. That is very critical because you know our coastline is vulnerable, and with the rising sea level, mangrove is important. So those are some of the key points I wanted to reiterate and mention with regards to the forestry sector. I will now turn my attention to the mining sector, and then we'll move to oil and gas. After that, we will take the questions. On mining, you would have heard from the Commissioner what is being done at the level of the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission. You would have seen a presentation, and that presentation speaks towards full disclosure of mineral properties, where by a click of a mouse you can see all the properties, the owners, the size, the location of those mineral properties throughout our country. So there is nothing that is not disclosed with regards to mineral properties throughout our country. Now, what we have seen in the mining sector, for example, is a massive increase in the production of commodities. Again, like in the forestry sector, in the mining sector, it is mostly to answer the demand that is created by the massive infrastructural works that is ongoing from both government and the private sector, and also the major developments in the oil and gas sector and the housing sector as well. So what we have seen is a massive increase in the production of aggregate. And I'll give you an example. Last year at this time, we were probably about 900,000 tons of aggregates. Mind you, in 2020, when we took over government, the annual production was 600,000 tons at that time. To date, at the end of July, our production is 1.6 million tons of aggregates. And that is because of the expansion of the quarry sector, the refinancing and the additional investment being made by the existing long-standing quarry operators, and also the new license that we would have issued over the last few years, some of those quarries are now coming into operation and production. We have seen many of them started production, new quarries started production, which has added to our production figure. So we are poised to surpass the 2 million, maybe we'll get up to 2.5 million tons of aggregates in 2024, which is a significant achievement and improvement from 2020 to now. 2020, we were 600,000 annually. In 2024, we can say comfortably, we'll probably increase that by 2 million or over 2 million tons in 2024, in just 4 years. And it will increase in 2025 because we have a number of other new quarries who are in preparation and who are developing their operation to start producing in 2025. Mind you, as we do that, the demand continues to increase, again, because of what is happening in our country in terms of development. The demand is forecasted that in another 2 to 3 years, we will need over 5 million tons of aggregate. GGMC is making preparation to ensure that within another few years that we will be in a position to produce, if not all, most of what the demand is locally. Sand, we have seen an exponential increase in sand mining and sand production, again because of the massive development. Loam is the same. We have seen a massive increase in that. Bauxite and gold, which I think is the key commodity that you would want to hear about. But let me speak on bauxite a little before I go to gold. Bauxite is set to rebound. As you know, bauxite has been on a decline for a while now, especially after the closure of the operation of Rusal in the Berbice River area in 2018, 2019. And we have had that unfortunate mishandling of the situation at Rusal, and that operation would have closed, significantly impacting on our production as a country. Today, we are turning it around with the two main companies operating, that's Jinmin, Forest Bauxite, in the Bonsika area, and with Bosai operating in the Linden area. We have seen significant investment, especially from Bosai in the Linden area. As a result of that, GGMC has issued a permit to a remnant deposit in the Karakari location, which will significantly increase their output, and we are seeing the necessary investment being made by the company to ensure that we see an increase in production, which simply also means more employment being created for the people of Region 10. With regards to Rusal, the position remains the same. There is nothing new for me to update you at this point in time. I would have loved to, but we are still speaking with a number of companies and to look at possibilities as to what can happen with Rusal, because we know there is a significant deposit of bauxite still lying there. But at this point in time, we're happy with the operation of Jinmin and Bosai operating, and we are poised to see an increase in production in 2024 and beyond. With regards to gold, and I don't think it's any secret that gold production has been on the decline. I think if you look at the chart, you will see 2016 it peaked, and then after that it went straight down, and it continues into 2022, 2023. Excuse me. Now, there are a number of factors that we can look at as to why gold production and declaration has declined steadily from 2016 right down to 2023. Now, when you look at it, and I can speak more in an informed position over the last 4 years, when you look at it, in 2021, 2022, there were significant flooding, not only on the coast, but in the hinterland communities. I myself went into the Mazaruni district, and I saw the devastation of the flooding in that major mining district. 2023, we had a significant drought. That even though we were allocating land tenures in the formerly Troy Resources area, some people were unable to go and work simply because there was no water. In 2024, it's the total reverse again, where we're having significant flooding. So the change or the weather pattern hasn't been too favorable to the mining sector, especially gold mining, which requires water and which requires our infrastructure to be in proper condition for people to access some of these lands, because some are very remote land. The other reason being, which we have noticed, and I think it was mentioned by the commissioner, is that for decades, our small and medium-scale miners have been mining the same properties over and over. Again, mainly because our recovery rate in gold mining is too low, and we have said that over and over, and we are working with the miners to ensure new methods and new technology are used to increase recovery rate, which will increase production and declaration, and which will increase their profitability as miners. Because if you're operating now and your recovery rate is 35%, but you can operate at the same operational cost and recover 60 to 70%, obviously the profitability would be greater and the declaration will be higher as a country. So one way we are addressing this issue is looking at ways that we can work with the small and medium-scale miners in increasing the recovery rate, which we have said over and over that we believe it is too low. 35–40% is way too low. And that is why what we have found is that small and medium-scale miners keep mining the same very property over and over. What we have found too is that the small and medium-scale operators are mostly engaged in alluvial mining, and many of them are not willing to invest into going to other forms of mining like hard rock mining, because it's a bit more to invest with procuring the equipment to go into hard rock mining. So for decades, they've been engaged in just alluvial mining. Again, we are working with a few of the medium-scale operators to look at ways in which they can move away from alluvial and even go into hard rock and produce more. For the one large-scale company that is producing, we have no issue because there is no use of mercury in their operation, and their recovery rate is in the 90s, maybe close to 95% recovery. And it just shows that if different methods and technology are used, the recovery rate can increase from 35–40% to 60–70%, which will make the sector more viable and also shows an increase, a massive increase in our production. So that is one way the GGMC has been tackling this issue of low production, is to work with miners and increasing the recovery rate. Another way is the access and the accessibility to land. That has always been a cry from small miners, especially the access to land and the accessibility to land. And the commissioner will tell you every single person that comes to the Ministry or GGMC for land, they want land with gold. Right? That's the common thing. Unfortunately, we are not in the position to tell you how much ounces of gold are there when we give you that land, that property. It calls for prospecting. Again, we find that, especially at the small and medium scale level, not much prospecting or not much investment is put into prospecting to ensure that you have mineralized properties before you invest heavily into mining. So it's a combination of a number of factors. And if you speak with the Guyana Gold and Diamond Miners Association, they would tell you that one of the biggest issues for them right now is the shortage of workers, the shortage of labor. You're in the media, you deal with all the ministers, you deal with all the sectors, and I'm sure it's not only the natural resources sector that is mentioning that the problem is shortage of labor. But if you go to agriculture, you go to any other sector, that is a big problem. We have seen too many of the medium-scale miners either moving away from mining or they have ventured into other sectors and other activities. For example, we have seen many of them move into the oil and gas sector. Just look at the Vredenoop Shore Base company. That is one of our biggest medium-scale mining in Guyana, investing in that. The hotels being built, some of them are in the mining field. Some of the contractors that you will see doing major projects in Guyana, they were once miners. So what we have seen is a lot of people moving from the sector into the oil and gas or the construction sectors, or they are engaged in other sectors while they have scaled down their activities in the mining sector. Now, that is another issue that we're being faced with regards to gold mining. Now, with regards, coming back to the issue of access and accessibility of land, because that has always been the cry from miners. I am happy to say that over the last 4 years, we have held 3 lotteries. We have held 3 lotteries. To date, over 550 small miners have benefited from their own mineral property. Over 550 small miners would have benefited. This year alone, in Bartica, 150, in Madhya, 200. That is 350 in 2024 alone. Small Guyanese miners who now own their own plot of land, or sorry, not own, but they have their permit to work on their own plot of land. Because we know in the past, small miners complain of being taken advantage of by the bigger miners. That is their place to work on land owned by medium-scale operators. And once they find gold, they're put off the land. That has been one of the main complaints from small miners. We have worked to address that by ensuring that many of them have their own mineral property. I can say safely, over 700 small miners have land tenures over the last 3 to 4 years. The 550 that I mentioned is only through the lotteries, but of course there is still the normal procedure through the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission. When you add that together, I'm sure it's more than 700 small Guyanese miners benefiting from mining land. Added to that, Marudi. Marudi mining was closed in Marudi, I think it was 2016. There was this mediation report that was done, but nothing was done by the previous administration to restart mining in Marudi. When we took over, we said that this will be a priority for us because this will benefit over 40 small miners, mostly miners in Region 9. And it's not only about the miners, but it's about the spin-off from mining activities in Region 9. Today we have in Aishalton the farmers group benefiting by supplying food products to the mining in Marudi. We have fuel dealers in Letem benefiting from supplying fuel to the miners in Marudi. So that operation has benefited the economy in Region 9 tremendously, and we have seen many villages benefiting in more than one way. Some of them are venturing into mining themselves, like Aishalton and Crowdar. They now will be part of the mining operation in Marudi with the assistance of the government and the association, the Rupununi Miners Association. We might hear from time to time that there are issues in Marudi, and we see in the media too that there are issues in Marudi. But I would like to say to you, I personally have met with the Rupununi Miners Association and the miners in Region 9 over 10 times already. Over 10 times. The most recent visit being like 2 months ago. And there is no issue with mining in Marudi. The only issue in Marudi is the lack of cooperation among the small-scale miners, our Guyanese miners. That is the only issue. And we have spoken to them time and time again and encouraged them to work together because there are many benefits that can be derived from working together. So there is no issue in Marudi with regards to mining. The only issue is the lack of cooperation sometimes from our people who are mining in there. That is something that is a work in progress. Like any organization, you will have some amount of infighting, but we are trying to work with them and to resolve it. Today we are seeing over 40-something miners, small Guyanese miners in Morudi. The Troy Resources area, we have seen in Troy Resources the allocation of 112 small properties, mineral properties, as promised by His Excellency, that we are going to look at that area since Troy Resources left, that we are going to look at ways in which we can help small miners. And we have done so. 112 Guyanese small miners, whether they were miners before or whether they are interested in getting into the sector now, they have been awarded a small mineral property in the formerly Troy Resources property. With regards to the actual Troy Resources property, I don't like to call it Troy Resources because it's no longer the Troy Resources property. The Kuruni district, that is back with the state. The state is in control of that property, which includes the living accommodation, the administrative section, as well as the plant, the processing plant, and the mineral pits, the mining pits. The state is in control of that. We have a presence, full-time presence, by the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission there. What we have been doing from our end of the Ministry of Natural Resources, GGMC, is that we have been speaking with a number of companies that have expressed an interest in taking over the operation. Only last week I met with a group. It's a group involving Guyanese and foreigners. There is another group that I met a few weeks back. I can tell you safely, without disclosing names, that I met with about 3 or 4 groups. That is a mixture of Guyanese and international investors that are interested in the Troy Resources area. 2 of them we have afforded the opportunity to take their technical staff into the area to do their own independent assessment of the plant, the mining pit, and to do some amount of drilling to shore up or to determine the resources that are there. So at least 2 companies, we have afforded them the opportunity to go into the site and do a technical assessment. There are about 2 more that we will afford the opportunity to do the similar exercise and to come back to us with a form proposal. So I will say that we are making advancement with regards to seeking out a new investor for that property. Initially, we had started with trying to put together a local consortium. I think His Excellency President Ali did mention it, and that is still a possibility, but from where I see it, it could be a possibility of a mixture between local miners or the local mining association and foreign investors, because it requires a lot of investment to restart the operation there. But I can tell you that we are committed, and we are working towards restarting that operation. And at some point in time, too, we want to restart the Rusal operation. Whether it's with Rusal or any other investor, we don't know as yet, but we are committed to restarting those 2 major operations. On the mining side, while gold declaration has been low, the road ahead for gold and gold production in Guyana or the path ahead is a bright one indeed, because we have signed recently an agreement with Reunion Gold, and I think it was well ventilated in the press. Reunion Gold is also partner with G2 Mining out of Brazil. So those 2 companies will be developing that mine. Only recently, His Excellency President Ali met with both companies to ensure that we have a commitment, a full commitment from those companies, that there will be a startup in sometime 2027, meaning production of forest gold in 2027. That is the work program that we receive from the company, and that is the work program that we will hold them towards. production or forest goal in 2027. That mine by itself will produce over 200,000 ounces annually to add to our production. Already we are still working with the small and medium scale miners to increase their production. The AGM or Zijing Mining Company, they are venturing into underground mining, as you know, so their production will increase significantly as well. And then in 2027, we will have this first other large-scale gold company producing. Added to that, again, in the media, we have seen all the releases from OMI and the discoveries to date at OMI. I believe that's that all Guyanese know what is happening at OMI and what are the resources available there. I think to date we have close to 4 million ounces of gold at OMI based on the figures that we receive. We also have a significant deposit still at Torparo, that is the ETK company. The large-scale company in the Marudi area is still doing exploration. And then we have another company in Madhya, Eagle Mountain Stronghold, that very soon they, or I think if I'm mistaken, they've already made application for their mining license or conversion of their prospecting license to mining license. So soon we may very well see us signing another agreement with that company in Eagle Mountain, which will probably go into production a little after Reunion Gold. So the road ahead for gold is a bright one. I will not paint a dim picture on it, even though right now we are still not satisfied with where the production is. I think we can do much more. What we have instituted from the ministry and the GGMCN is to ensure that we do more enforcement and monitoring activities. We ensure that there is stricter compliance. For example, every single gold operation must have what we call a production sheet. And when the mines officer visits that operation, they must be able to see that production sheet and make a record to GGMC. That is something that we're enforcing. It was always there, but we're ensuring that there is more compliance, or there is total compliance from all operators. If you probably noticed in today's newspaper, we have a release out to advise all gold operators that paying staff or paying for services by gold is not allowed and is illegal. That should not be done, because we have had complaints where workers are being paid with gold or partners in investment are being paid with gold. That we will not allow. We are going to clamp down on that. You have seen many other operations being carried out by a number of agencies which have yielded results to date. And I'm speaking particularly of the ones at the airport. I think there were 2 or 3 at the airport. So more and more we are seeing the Guyana Gold Board buying more gold. If we compare the figure from last year to this year, we would see an increase in the amount of gold that is being sold to the Guyana Gold Board, whether it's in Georgetown, Port Kaituma, and Bartica. What we will do too at the Guyana Gold Board is to do mobile stops and purchasing of gold. For example, we are going to start the mobile unit operating in Letem. That is to get the gold from Marudi and other areas that they can sell to the Guyana Gold Board at a fixed date, time, and place in Letem. We will try to do that in the Peruni, Mazaruni area as well, so that most, if not all, of the gold that are being produced, ideally we would want all the gold that are produced to come into the formal channel. That is the Guyana Gold Board or the dealers or the licensed traders. And that is an exercise that is ongoing. I think we have really intensified that exercise, and we are seeing a lot of success of recent. One final issue on mining is, as I mentioned, in forestry we have done the mineral mapping, the National Forest Inventory. So we know what is in our forests, and we know where to allocate concessions to forest stakeholders. Similarly, in mining, the mineral inventory or mineral mapping has not been updated for decades. So today, if we point a miner in a direction and say that there is mineral there, that data is old data that would have been acquired maybe 40, 50 years ago. And a lot has changed from now to then. Simply the use of different technology, more advanced technology in the surveying and the discovery of minerals by way of doing these survey using technology, all that would have changed from then to now. So this hasn't been done for a long time. And I would want to think that the cost was a big issue as to why we didn't do it. Today, I think we're in a better position as a country too, and especially with our commitment in the low carbon development strategy. It is important and it is necessary that we start the mineral inventory process in Guyana this year. We have recently awarded the contract. The contract will go to, I think it's a French company. Sorry, that is the reservoir audit. The mineral mapping is going to a U.S. company, I think a Virginia company. I think is Global Venture. Global Venture is that company that has been awarded this contract to start the mineral processing survey inventory. So that is a project that will help the mining sector and at the same time help us to keep our commitments in the low carbon development strategy. It will be a multi-year project. We will start with specific mining districts, especially the Mazaruni, the Potaro, the Northwest, the Cayuni mining districts. Those are the 4 main mining districts. There are 2 others, but we're going to focus on those 4 for now because we have a larger amount of our small miners and medium-scale miners concentrated in those 4 mining districts. So this is a project that will help us significantly to identify not only where our gold deposits are, but all minerals. And you know, in keeping with what is happening around the world, especially in the transitioning phase from fossil to renewable, critical minerals are critical. Critical minerals are needed. They are heavily in demand. If you look at lithium and other minerals, they are being sought after, especially in South America where there are traces of lithium, because I think Argentina is probably the biggest producer of lithium in the world, along with a few other South American countries. So we believe that there may be traces here. So this project is going to help us to identify all of these minerals that we have. So it will help us in the allocation of properties and to ensure that we safeguard our forests at the same time. So I wanted to mention that in closing on the mining. I will come to oil and gas now, and this will be the final area I'll speak on before we open for questions. And I know a lot of people, this is actually the part that you're waiting on. But I went through that to show that the Ministry of Natural Resources and as a government too, our policy is not only to build an oil and gas economy, but also to keep these other 2 important sectors alive, continue to expand and work with stakeholders, continue to provide incentives. That is mining and forestry, which is critical for us. Now with the oil and gas sector, I want to say from the inception, and some people may not agree, but when you look at it from a neutral point of view, we would say that Guyana's oil and gas sector is one of the better managed oil and gas sector in the world. I will go to say in the world. We have one of the better oil and gas sector, or is managed better than many other countries around the world. And why do I say that? 1, transparency and accountability. Now, we did a quick check. We did a quick check to see how many oil-producing countries in the world will have the vice president of the country, who is the lead policy maker in the oil and gas sector, speak on the sector every single week in a year. If he's not available on a Thursday, he do it on a Wednesday. If Thursday is a holiday, we'll do it on a Friday. But every single week, we have the chief policy maker in our country, our Vice President, Dr. Barry Jagdeo, speak on the sector and give the opportunity to the media and anyone else to ask questions on the sector. We also share information on the sector, like today we did that. Some people may criticize us that, oh, we have a long presentation and we had too much information, but that is the purpose of us being here, is to share information with you. We may go an extended half hour, but I'm sure you'll find it worthwhile because that is what you need. You need information. And that's why we're here, to share that information with you. There is nothing to hide in the management of the oil and gas sector. So we did a quick check to see how many countries have either the president, vice president, or the minister responsible for petroleum speaking on oil and gas and allowing the media to ask them questions. And we have found that there are few countries that do it, and the countries that actually did it, they'll probably do it 8 to 10 times a year. That is what we found. In Guyana, you have the chief policymaker or vice president speaking to you 352. 352. Right? I got careful with my maths. 352. Yeah. Yes, every week on the oil and gas sector. Then we will do it at least twice a year, mid-year, end of year. The president at this press conference, he's open to questions. And there are so many other ways in which we divulge information, our website and our press releases. So I think there's the sharing of information has really been on the positive end with regards to managing the oil and gas sector. The transparency and accountability in the sector. If you look at our Natural Resources Fund, for example, anyone from any part of the world can check to see how much money is in the Natural Resources Fund. Anyone, anywhere in the world will know how much money flows out of the Natural Resources Fund. And there are only two ways in which money can flow out of the Natural Resources Fund. It's through the national budget, which is debated in the National Assembly, where there is an entire week for the opposition to question us on expenditures, and it must be approved by the National Assembly. That's one way. The second way is if there is a national disaster of great magnitude and we need emergency funding to help our people to restore them to their former state, then we will withdraw money from the Natural Resources Fund. But again, it must be approved by the National Assembly. So there is no way in the law that money can move out of the Natural Resources Fund without the approval of the National Assembly. I wanted to make that point again, even though Vice President did it, the President did it, and we on several occasions said it. But I want to reinforce it, especially for our viewers too, because they need to know that the only way money can flow out of the Natural Resources Fund is if there's approval by the National Assembly, which is the Parliament of Guyana. So when we are criticized that the sector is not being managed and the revenue not, that is not so. It is not so. There are strong measures placed in the Natural Resources Fund Act to ensure that there is proper accountability and transparency, and for you to know how much money flows into that fund. Added to that, we, from time to time, we have seen the opposition in Parliament asking questions. We would have provided answers to that question. When there's the Committee of Supply, there are a number of questions being asked. We would have ensured that we answer those questions. And only recently, there was a question on the optimization of production. And I think this is a topical issue right now. Whether we are satisfied as a government that Exxon is increasing production on the 3 ships or the FPSOs offshore Guyana. We have seen the very people who signed on to the agreement questioning the very thing today. Now, that is strange, because the environment, the ESIA for Liza 1 and Liza 2 development was signed by the then administration. I think at that time the head of the EPA was Dr. Adams. And he would have been engaged in that ESIA. He would have signed that agreement. And he must know that in that agreement, that the Unity FPSO has a maximum capacity of 300,000 barrels per day, and that the Unity FPSO has a maximum capacity of 144,000 barrels per day. That is in the LISA 1 and 2 ESIA signed by Dr. Adams. And he is part of this three-party committee or whatever they have on oil and gas. And then yet we see a member of that same very three-party, Mr. Patterson, asking the very question in Parliament, whether we are allowing, if we are allowing Exxon to exceed production on the FPSO. Now, the production on the FPSO, as it is now, is being optimized. There is no secret to that. The Unity, Prosperity, and Destiny, I think to date, Destiny production is close to 155,000 barrels per day. Unity is close to 255,000 barrels per day. And Prosperity is about 230,000 barrels per day. That is the production now. It is still in the testing stages. Exxon and our technical team are working day in, day out with EPA and other agencies to ensure that the production will not hamper any operation offshore. And it will not affect the operation offshore. There will be no environmental issues with increase in production offshore. So the capacity is not the issue. The capacity is not the issue. In the ESIA, the capacity speaks to Prosperity being 264,000 barrels per day. Prosperity. Unity, it speaks towards 300,000 barrels per day. So that is allowed in the ESIA for these FPSOs. And it's a normal practice around the world that as the fields mature, the production will increase. And that is what we are seeing that is taking place in Guyana. So we don't foresee, we don't have a problem now, and we don't foresee any problem with the optimization of production once it's kept to that level, because it has been in the testing phase and we are satisfied that there is no issue. For example, in 2024, there have not been any major flaring from none of the FPSOs. We have not, and this is a report from EPA, in 2024, there have not been any additional flaring or flaring exceeding limit in 2024. In 2021 to 2023, you know, we had the issue with the flash gas compressor and the Destiny FPSO. That has been fixed. We don't have that problem anymore. However, because of that consistent problem and because we had an issue with flaring, we put into the environmental permit a fee for flaring. I think it's $50 per ton. I think to date, EPA would have collected maybe $2.6, $2.7 million in fee for flaring. But as reported, in 2024, there has not been any flaring above the prescribed limit. In mentioning earlier that Guyana is, or the oil and gas sector in Guyana is a better managed sector than many in the world, it is because we have simply learned from the mistakes made by other oil producing countries. It is because we had that advantage of looking at other models around the world because we are a late starter. We have had the advantage of looking at models that fail and models that were successful. And we have drawn from different models and created one that is best suited for Guyana. I think that contributed significantly to the sector moving in such a rapid pace without any major issue in the sector being encountered by the operators or us as the regulator. So much so that Guyana today, one of the newest oil producer country in the world, is being used as a model country. And I say this because I personally met with the Minister of Energy from Namibia. He was here, Mr. Dennison was at the meeting too. He was here in Guyana with a delegation. just to look at the model that Guyana is using so that they can adopt that same model in Namibia. Because as you know, Namibia is probably just after Guyana in terms of new discoveries, but they haven't moved towards production as yet. So they're building out their framework and their model to manage the sector. So they took it upon themselves to come to Guyana and to have a look firsthand at our model so that they can use that to manage their sector. Suriname is the same, and we've been working with Suriname because they're a little behind in terms of production too. And they have been seeking our assistance, especially with regards to local content and developing local content. So we've been helping a number of these smaller countries that are now moving to production with crafting their model because they see Guyana as a model country in terms of managing the oil and gas sector, in terms of the dissemination of information. And we don't mind media or anyone being critical of the sector. We see that every day in the media, criticism of the sector. But the criticism must be fair and it must be truthful too. And it must be designed in a way in which it is termed constructive criticism and not criticizing for the sake of criticizing, or not criticizing because you're trying to seek mileage, whether political or not, from using the oil and gas sector as a tool to do so. The criticism must be fair, but equally our successes must be reported too. And it is not only the success of the PUP civic government, it is the success of Guyana. And that is how we need to look at it. It is the success of Guyana. Because I'm sure whether we're on the opposite side or wherever we sit, when we are in a different land, we boast of our country. We don't want to go to a foreign land and criticize Guyana oil and gas sector. In country, we can do that. But we must be proud of our success and what we're doing. Because many countries are looking to us as a model country. But yet, sometimes we criticize unfairly, and unfortunately, some are not factual. And then there's this trend that we live in Guyana. There is no population in Guyana. Worse yet, they have no data on which they're basing their analysis. Because we are the custodians of the data, the government and Exxon. And if Exxon have to give out data of any sort, they need to seek approval from us. If Exxon is giving data or exhibiting data at any conference internationally, we have to give the approval for them to do that. So I'm not sure where these analysts will get the data in Guyana from. Like one person said, we have 18 billion reserves. I don't know where they get the data from, honestly. Because Exxon and the government of Guyana have that data. We have our consultant who's working with us. But these people magically pull a figure out of the air. Guyana have 18 billion barrels of oil in reserve, and the government is not disclosing it. Why would we not want to disclose how much we have? If we have 18 billion, we will say that because it means well for our country. There is no reason for hiding it. As a matter of fact, hiding it would only stagnate our economy and country. If we say tomorrow we have 18 billion, and more investors will be lined up to come to Guyana. And why would we not want that? But we got to be factual. We got to be truthful. We can't lie to the people and say we have 18 billion. Whoever said that, I don't know where they got the information from. But certainly not from Guyana, I can tell you that. Not from Exxon, not from the Ministry of Natural Resources, not from GGMC. I don't know. Maybe they have some magic wand that they can pull the data from and they can determine how much resources we have. But that is not true. And speaking of resources, we have had a minimal increase in resources. I think we have moved to 11.6 billion now. 11.6 billion barrels equivalent offshore in the Stabroek block now. And that by itself is a significant find. Namibia, they're saying is a significant find, which I agree to, but it's only about 4 or 5 billion. But they're saying it's significant. Compare that with Guyana, 11.6 billion barrels. and counting. It will increase because Exxon is still doing exploration. We will have exploration in the other blocks offshore Guyana, and we are going to issue the license to the bidders that bid during the bid rounds. And that is the other thing I wanted to say to you, because we have seen the negative comments from the, I think was the opposition shadow minister, I think, or the opposition leader, that the bid round was a failure. Now, first thing I want to reiterate, because Vice President will do it almost every day. Almost every Thursday he will do it over and over because he's asked the same question over and over. Now, we went ahead and got into bid round without much data. That's the first thing we have to look at. It's a choice that we made because if we had waited to do the seismic survey, that by itself will take 12 to 18 months before we can actually go into bid round. But we said, you know what, we're going to go into bid round with the limited data that we have. We have the 2D data. So that was one, the challenge. Two, at the same time we were doing our bid round, Norway had their bid round. If you check it or you Google it, you will see. Norway had their bid round. The UK was looking to give out license in the North Sea. At the same time, Suriname had their bid round at the same time. So it's not that it is not competitive. It's very competitive. And there is limited players in the sector, limited major players in the sector. Not every oil company can drill in deep waters Exxon is doing. Not every oil company can do that. So we have to take that into consideration, that our exploration is done in deep water, ultra deep water, over 5,000 feet in depth. So it needs specialized skill, equipment, and technology. So it's not every single small oil company can bid because they won't be able to operate. So it was a very competitive period that our bid round was taking place through. And the other thing is that, and you will know, the pressure being placed on oil companies and financing for new exploration production activities. And we know where that is coming from. We know the whole shift to transition, the movement of transitioning to renewable energy. We know the pressures that are being placed on fossil producers. We know the pressure that are being placed on financial institutions that want to finance new oil exploration. That is a fact. It is happening all over the world. That is why we have to rely on countries that have the kind of equity like Exxon and others, because it is not easy accessing capital to do new exploration around the world. When you go to COP and you go to any climate change conference, I went to Belém, Brazil recently, and a few countries are suggesting that we should ban fossil fuel. Now you're going to ban fossil fuel, but what's the alternative? You have to fully transition first before you do so. You can't ban it because it sounds nice and sexy to say. You got to be real about it. And that is why we have, I wouldn't say encouraged, but we are working with Exxon to optimize production. And when the Vice President said one time at the press conference that our depletion policy is to get the resources out of the ground as fast as possible and to use the revenue to develop our country so that our people can enjoy a better life and to grow the other sectors, he is correct. He is correct because the window for fossil fuel is closing. Whether we like it or not, it will close at some point in time. The world is transitioning away from fossil fuel. We can't sit here and say, oh, leave our oil, don't produce enough, don't produce so much, let us cut down on the production, let it last longer. We cannot. If we had discovered oil 5 decades ago, we would have been in that position, that we can actually ration or we can actually control production based on pricing, but we are not in that position now, mainly because of the whole climate change and the transitioning conversation that is resonating around the world and financing not being available for new exploration and production. So there are serious challenges that we got to look at. So when we speak of the sector, we got to be real, and we got to look at all the challenges that we are facing as a country too, and yet we can manage the sector in such an efficient manner as we're doing right now. So the bid round, I'm happy to say, First of all, let me apologize too, that I know personally it has taken longer than it should have, but it is not totally the fault of the technical team at the ministry or anyone else. It is mainly because we had to work with the bidders. Some of them, especially the locals, were looking for international partners. They were looking for investors. They were looking for operators. So we had to work with them. A few were ready, but we can't do a PSA for a separate PSA for every different company. We had to finalize one PSA that can be used for all the companies. You can't get a PSA to suit every other company that will bid. So a few bidders held up the others because we wanted to finalize one PSA that we can use. That PSA has been finalized, I'm happy to say that, with no changes to the fiscal terms. With no changes to the fiscal terms. And you know the new fiscal terms. It is 10% royalty, it is 10% tax, it is 65% cost recovery as against 75, and the 50-50 profit sharing. So the 50-50 remain the same, 10% royalty, 10% tax, 65% cost recovery, meaning that we will get more upfront than the Stabrook agreement where it is 75% and we get more at the back end. So we would have changed that. That fiscal regime remains the same in the PSA. The only thing we would have worked with the new companies that will come on board on is the work program. Because I agree, while we must have one PSA for all the companies, the work program may differ for some companies. And that is where we had to iron out a few issues, especially with the penalties, because you will know in the new PSA, the penalty is very heavy. That if you set a work program for $300 million and you cannot fulfill that, then you pay us 50% of it. It is a steep penalty. So we had to work through a few of those issues without changing the fiscal regime. Today, I'm happy to say that every single one of those 6 companies is 6 companies, 8 blocks, because 2 companies have bid for 2. Every one of those 6 companies have submitted their applications to us. We have given them the PSA. They're currently reviewing that with the intent to sign, and all of them have indicated that they're ready to pay their signing bonus. And you know, for the shallow water, it's $10 million US, and for the deep water, it is $20 million US. So upon signing of those PSA, the payment we expect, and we will ensure that the payment of the signing bonus is made, and of course it will be public, not like the Stabrook agreement. So with regards to the bid round, I'm happy to say that we are moving forward with that, but I know it has taken longer than it should have. But there are a number of issues, reasons as to why that would have happened. In terms of the audits, the forest audit, as you know, that has been very much ventilated in the media and elsewhere. We have closed that at the 214 figure. I would have, based on advice, we would have written Exxon saying that this is the final report. We are waiting the response. I think there is a time period for that response, and then we will take it forward from there. But from the government's perspective and our position is that the final report has been closed off at the 214, I think 214.6 million. Now, let me stress too, not only for the media, because I'm sure you know, but for the viewers, because we are live as well. Let me stress too, that there was this perception and allegation against myself, the vice president, staff members, that there is some kind of sinister motive behind the whole issue of that forest audit. First thing, let me say, in an audit, there is nothing to do with cash. There is no money involved in an audit. An audit is basically looking through receipts and invoices and ensuring that the expenses spent, or the money spent, are accounted for. So when we say it's $214 million, it don't mean in any way $214 million will be transferred from Exxon to the Ministry of Natural Resources. It don't work like that. That's not how audits work. It simply means that $214 million, once we agree, $214 million will be removed from the cost bank. It means that the country don't have to pay back that $214 million. I wanted to say that because there's this misconception that is $214 million US in cash. There is no such thing like that. It's just writing off the amount from the cost bank. That is the only transaction involved there. Where once the government say this is the final amount, Exxon agrees, and we don't go to arbitration, then the $214 million come out of the cost bank. So we don't have to pay that back. The cost bank is reduced, in other words. That is the process. The second audit, again, we have seen a lot in the newspaper of government not doing anything with regards to expenses incurred in the Kaichor and Kanji block that is found in the second audit. Now, let me just remind all of us that it is the government that initiated the audit, and that is the purpose of the audit. The purpose of the audit is to look at these issues, whether Exxon is using revenue in the Kanji and Kaichor block, but is being added to the Stabroek Cost Bank. That is one of the purpose of the audit. And we should, in fact, rather than carrying negative releases or statements of this, the auditors should be commended for actually finding these inaccuracies and inconsistencies of seeing expenses incurred in the Kanji and Kaichor block under the Stabroek Cost Bank. So that by itself means that our auditors are doing what they're supposed to do. Ensure that there is no additional expenses outside of the Stabroek block that goes into the Stabroek Cost Bank. So I think they should be commended. And to say that we are not doing anything about it is unfair because there is no final report on the second audit as yet. There is no final report as yet. So it simply means we will take that cost out of the cost bank before any final report is produced. There is no way the government is going to accept expenses from Kanji and Kaichor in the Stabroek Cost Bank. So I don't think that should be a non-issue. And the auditors should be commended for finding these inconsistencies. With regards to the third audit, I think we are well on course to ensure we sign that maybe in a month. In September, sorry, we'll sign that in September. Again, we're looking at the same model where we can have the local consortium to partner, a local consortium to partner with international company or companies so that we can build capacity. Now, there are a few other things I want to mention quickly. Before, I think the interest rate, Bobby would have mentioned, and I think that's well ventilated now, that there is no interest on the investment made. Bobby made a presentation on that, mainly because Exxon is using equity and they're plowing back profit into those projects. It's not, they're not taking loans. So obviously there is no interest attached to it. On the gas to energy project, I think we are well, the project is well advanced. We have received reports from Exxon that the laying of the pipeline will be completed in the time frame given. That is, by the ending of this year, we will have the pipeline into the Wales development area. I think you know that we had to shut down the 2 FPSOs, mainly because we had to connect those pipes to the FPSO so that the gas could feed through the pipeline. On the construction of the power plant, we are, while we are concerned, we are satisfied with the progress being made to ensure that we have that project running or up and running early next year. That is still our timeline, and we are working towards that timeline still. On the relinquishment issue, CGX issue, for example, let me just speak on that quickly. The position mentioned by the Vice President last week at his press conference remains the same. We have not made any other decision besides what was mentioned by the Vice President. That is, the license has expired, CGX license has expired. That is their expiration license. They were given time for their appraisal program. because the law stipulates time, an extension to time for them. Once there's a discovery of commercial possibility, that time must be given for the appraisal. That time too has expired on the 28th of June of this year. So as it is now, there is no valid license held by CGX, and somebody I think reached out to me to ask if Repsol has a valid license. The answer to that, I think Dennis, I think the answer to that is no. Repsol had a license in the Kanuku block. That would have expired too. I think May of this year, or was it May last year? May of last year or May of this year, it would have expired. So there is no license held by Repsol in the Kanuku block, which is back with the state. There is no license held by CGX presently. However, the matter is still at the cabinet level for further discussion. That is an update on CGX as it is now. The Stabroek block, as you know, the renewal is up on the 7th of October this year, right, the Stabroek renewal. So our teams have already started work with Exxon to ensure that we work on the relinquishment of 20% of that Stabroek block. Now, bear in mind, and I want to let the media know too, that it is not 20% of the entire Stabroek block. I think you should know that from up front. Right? We know that the Stabroek block is about 26,000 square kilometers in size. But the relinquishment clause states that it excludes production area, appraisal area as well too. Those areas must be excluded, and then you know that there is an area being affected because of the issue with Venezuela too. So our team is working out the acreage that will remain after that, and then 20% of it will have to be relinquished and comes back to the state. But the provision in the Act is that the producing area, the area of production, the area of appraisal, those areas have to be excluded before you calculate the 20%. Right? The technical team is here, they have been working on it. So that, I would say, is on stream for October, when Exxon will seek a renewal. The process has already started. Now, on the issue of production, we spoke about that. You know Hammerhead is the next project. Already Exxon have started consultation, the scoping meetings. They probably did about 10 scoping meetings around the country with the view of applying to EPA for the environmental permit. However, we have not received the field development plan as yet. That will probably be in the first quarter of 2025, and then we will do our necessary due diligence with the view of issuing the license once everything is okay. And on the issue of field development plan, I saw in the newspaper today, I think it's Mr. Patterson saying that the government should disclose every single thing and that all Guyanese should know. I think our government is probably the only government in the world too that have all the production license, all the environmental permits, all the mine mineral agreements, everything is online. You have seen from the presentations that we have, there are a number of information and documents online. The FDP is a technical document. The FDP, I'm not sure if everybody have had the opportunity to see what an FDP looks like. It's about 1,000 pages, 2,000 pages. That's the size of an FDP, and it's very technical with proprietary information as well too. However, I was advised that one is with the registrar once you submit the license and everything. So it is already public. But what we can do, what we are open to, is that if you have any question on the FDP, let us know. We will provide the information. But I don't think because of the sensitive information and the proprietary nature of some of it, that we may be able to do that. And I don't think any other country in the world, they actually do that. But we have the license. The license and the environmental permit is a product of the FDP. The FDP is the raw data, and from that, when you process it, you get a license and you get the environmental permit. So reading the production license and reading the environmental permit, it is deduced from the FDP. It is extracted from the FDP. That is the product of the FDP. So rather than us asking for the cane, we have the cane juice, which is much better and refined. I don't know if there's a good analogy, but I hope you understand. But again, if you have any question, we are free to provide the information. I don't know what question may arise from an FDP or what you're looking for, but we'll be willing to provide the answer. Now, quickly on training, the center at Port Morant have already started to function. Only recently I was at a graduation. We graduated 24 young Guyanese who is probably already on the Unity FPSO working. That by itself is an achievement. Martin would have mentioned 6,500 Guyanese working in the oil and gas sector. That is an accomplishment for us as a country, especially new oil producing country. Now, we had a EOI out for companies to shoot seismic survey in offshore Guyana. I'm happy to say we had about 8 companies submitted or expressed their interests. We have narrowed that down to 7, and very soon we'll go back to them for a form proposal, and we will inform you. As you know too, we have the cap and stack in country. That is something that all of us should be proud of, because in this entire region of the Caribbean, Latin America, there are only 2, and we have 1 in Guyana. There are only 13 in the world, and 1 is in Guyana. And yet we see in the newspaper that it will take longer to deploy a cap and stack that is in country than to bring one from Houston, Texas. Now, the smallest child in this country will know that if you have a cap and stack sitting at Houston in Guyana here at Gisby, it can get out there in less than a day, because a supply boat from Port Georgetown to the Stabroek Block takes about 10 to 12 hours, taking into consideration the weather conditions. This here will take a bit longer because it is specialized equipment, and you have to get specialized crane to lift it, to load it, specialized boat to take it out. So it will take a little longer than the 10 to 12 hours. But it is in Guyana. Compare that with it being in Houston. When you got to go mobilize and get a boat and everything to come here, the sailing time from Houston to Stabroek against the sailing time from Georgetown to Stabroek Block, I mean. So even the smallest child will know having a cap and stack in country makes perfect sense, and obviously it will be deployed much faster than if one got to come from Houston, Texas. Maybe they mix up the Houston. This is Houston, Guyana, that's Houston, Texas. Maybe that's the mix-up. Because I can't see a sensible person saying that it will take longer to move it from Georgetown than if we got to bring one from Houston. I really don't buy that, and I don't think it makes sense. Now, finally, on EITI, because I know we have had in the past, before I go to EITI, I'm happy to say that we got cabinet approval for the French company. I mentioned this earlier, that a French company has been awarded a contract to do a reservoir audit. It's something that we should have done a long time now, but I'm happy that we're going to start this soon. So the 11.6 figure that I give you is purely what is supplied to us. What we are going to do as the government now is to have our independent consultant look at all the data that are available and then do an assessment of our resources offshore. So we too will be in a position to say, you know what, yes, it's 11.6, or it's 10, or it's 12, or it's 13, or it's 15. So we are going to do our independent assessment of our resources, or the audit of our reservoirs offshore, in keeping with the license, of course. Now with the closing with the EITI, I know that we had issues with reporting in the past. I'm not afraid to say it, or I'm not ashamed to say it either. We were temporarily suspended, I think, 2 years back for not finishing and submitting the report. I think the deadline was a month after, something like that. I can't remember, or 2 months. It was supposed to be May, but they gave us until July. But I'm happy to say this time around that we are going to submit the 2022 EITI report, which is due December of this year. We are going to submit it next month. We are well on course to submit that report next month. And the 2023 report, which is due in December of 2025, we are going to submit at the ending of the first quarter 2025. So we are way ahead in terms of our submission with our reports. Also, what we are doing too is that we would have the MSG, that is the multi-stakeholder group, have adopted the beneficial ownership roadmap. So finally we can move forward with this process because it was the multi-stakeholder group comprising industry, government, and civil society that had to look at this and to give final approval. We have got that final approval, so we're in a position now to move forward with the process. So you would see that unfolding very shortly. So I know it's a lot of information. I know that's why we provided snacks to the back, because I noticed Marcel look tired and hungry. That's why Dennis positioned himself at the back, actually, because the snacks is at the back. Yes, so you got a lot of information. So I want to stop there, but in closing, I want to first of all thank the leaders, the managers and the leaders in the ministry, and the almost 1,200 staff of the Ministry of Natural Resources across all the sectors, and to thank you too, as the media, for your interest in the sector, for being here today, and let me thank you in advance for reporting what was mentioned today too. I don't want to say truthfully, but accurately. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister, for that detailed presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to move into the question and answer section. For the purposes of time, we're here as long as you wish, right? What we're going to do is try to take about 4 to 5 questions at a time, and then we're going to keep going. By the show of hands, we essentially identify yourself. I will recognize you, identify yourself, and we take the questions. Yes. Darshini Prasad is going to help me. I see Marcel. Marcel had her hands up even before Minister finished speaking. So I'll come to Marcel, then I come to Mr. King, and then we take it from there. Okay? Everyone will get a chance to ask a question. We have the time.
It's on now. I'll ask my first 2 questions now and then wait until the other round. The first question is on gold, Minister. You listed a number of reasons for the low declarations over the past year, but there was no mention of smuggling. Is that because you believe, or the ministry believes, that this isn't a factor affecting low declarations? And following up to that, leads me into your visit to New York. There was the controversy about how you were met and who met you and all of that. I wanted to know if you can clarify for us how that went, who were the persons that met you, and the purpose, behind that meeting or greeting, whatever it is. And you had said that the Mohammed's name was mentioned. Do you know who mentioned it? And if you can explain for us in what context and how you feel overall about this whole experience, I would say.
Thank you very much, Marcel. Mr. King? And then this young lady. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Kim O'King for Reuters. Minister, I know you talked about the lack of a decision at this time on CGX, but could you explain or expound on the considerations for that decision? The Vice President had talked about a concern that the joint venture CGX Frontiera may not be able to get a capable partner and the finances. Could you expound on that? And if there are any additional considerations for the government? Is there like a timeline for making that decision? And has the joint venture committed to coming back with further information on its capability with regard to making that decision? I'd like to ask also, the arbitration between the Starboard Block partners and Chevron has been delayed, and it's likely that there won't be a conclusion of that dispute until 2025. Do you see this arbitration, the delayed arbitration, affecting the planning and development with respect to the seventh project that ExxonMobil has proposed, the Hammerhead project? I'd also like to find out, the government selected Fulcrum LNG to partner with Exxon potentially for a standalone gas development. Could you say what companies or banks are included in Fulcrum's proposal as financial partners to advance that natural gas development? Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. King. I recognize this young lady here, Divina.
Thank you, Davina Bagat with Kaichur News. Just a couple of follow-up questions from me, sir, on your presentation. Firstly, you mentioned countries that you looked at to sort of develop Guyana's oil and gas sector here. Could you tell us what countries you looked at and what lessons were learned or incorporated specifically? And you mentioned the discoveries, the update to our reserves. So 8 new discoveries were made since our last update. Can you say how many of those discoveries were appraised for Exxon to move to this new resource estimate? And based on your comments earlier that the intention is to get the oil out faster, are you confirming that the oil fields will be depleted before 20 years, which is the estimated life cycle for each project? And finally, on my follow-up questions, there is a specific timeline outlined for the completion of audits in the PSA. For instance, a 60-day period for Exxon to respond. Can you say then why the audits have been taking so long to be completed?
Thanks very much. Is there anyone else, any other question at this stage? Sorry, Dennis, I didn't see you there. You're all the way to the back, man.
Minister, could you say quickly, are your visas still intact following the recent interaction with the U.S. authorities? And substantively on the oil and gas sector, what's the status of the plans to construct a refinery in Guyana? And could you also say whether Guyana has any plans to sell its natural gas to CARICOM member states, and have you conducted any feasibility studies about whether, in fact, this is workable and what might be the price points you're looking at?
Mr. Shabral, we're going to take one more question of this round. I recognize this young man here in this bright color shirt.
Good afternoon, Minister. Antonio Day from HEP Nightly News. I know that the government is fast-tracking with the gas LNG project. I would like to know from you if many persons are raising concerns about the proposed location. I would like to know if you, by chance, had any consultations with persons who are living in the vicinity, and if you have assured them that they will not be affected.
Thanks very much. Minister, you're going to take the first round of responses.
All right, let me thank you for questions asked. I think it's about 3 or 4 persons would have asked about 11 or 12 questions I have documented here. Let me start from the last question that was asked, or the gas energy project. Now, the simple answer would be yes, because I was part of consultation at the West Demerara consultation at the West Demerara Secondary School. I was also part of a consultation at the Bell West Community Center, I think it was. And I was also part of a consultation in the Wales, Friesland, Villefort area. So I know that consultations were held because I was part of many of those consultations. At those consultations, I can tell you myself, Minister Jill, the Attorney General, Mr. Brassington, Mr. Muniz, a number of agencies were present. So it was not only to deal with any impact of putting the gas energy project in that area, but also to deal with any land tenure and any other issue that may arise. EPA was also there too. So yes, there were a number of consultations being held throughout the entire Region 3 and in other areas as well, because it's a national project. So the location, now when we took over government in August 2020, there were some studies done with regards to this same project, but at a smaller scale, at 8-inch pipeline, and a few of the locations that were proposed included 1, Vridinoop, 2, Ogle, another one was at Maikoni, I believe, and Mahaika. If I can remember clearly, those were some of the locations that were proposed in the study done by the previous administration. But when we look at it, we realize that we don't want to build just a power plant, but what we want is to build out an industrial manufacturing park around that power plant and to have other subsidiary industries built around that power plant as well too, like a fertilizer plant, for example. So we look at that area because it was an area formerly used by the Wales Sugar Estate, Gaisuku. However, that estate was closed down under the previous administration. The factory dismantled, and basically it was not possible to restart or reopen the estate, but the land was available. So land was one of the main contributing factors to taking it away from the main population centers, because imagine putting a power plant in Ogle or at Vridinoop, right? And the disturbance and the pollution and whatever other discomfort it may cause to the population in those heavily populated areas. So 1 was the land, 2, away from the major population centers, 3, access to the Demerara River as well. So those were some of the key pointers that we look at, with less disturbances to the environment and everything else, and the displacement of people as well. Because had we placed it in Vridinoop or Ogle, it means the displacement of a lot of people. In this case, we are not displacing any homestead, but the pipeline is passing through mostly farmlands. So I don't believe that there is any significant or major issue with regards to the location, and based on the consultations that we would have held with residents, especially in Region 3. As a matter of fact, we think that is the best site for that project, because from that we can build out a large manufacturing industrial area with access to the Demerara River for easy imports and exports. On the other question of the refinery and gas to CARICOM, now we had a process whereby we would have advertised for interest in building a refinery. I think we had about 9 proposals coming through that formal process, And then we had a number of other proposals coming through directly to us, with a number of interests to build that refinery. Now, we have started that evaluation. Many companies were engaged, but what they have been looking at, and we got to be real in such an investment, is whether we can sustain a 30,000 barrel refinery if it's economical, because we know what is happening around the world. Whether we can go for a bigger refinery, whether the government is in a position now to ensure that the feedstock is available from our share of the crude, or maybe at a later date we'll be in a better position to supply the feedstock to the refinery, because it makes no sense having a refinery in Guyana and we cannot supply the crude to it. It makes no sense, because you simply got to import crude. That is defeating the entire purpose. So we have to determine, if we increase the size of the refinery, if we have enough feedstock at this point in time. I know we will when we have 5, 6 FPSOs, but if we have now to sustain a 100,000 barrel refinery or not. So you got to look at the feasibility, the economics in doing a 30,000 or 50,000 as against 100,000. Feedstock if it is available, and also logistics. Now, one of the biggest hindrance to our development right now, which we never thought it would have been an issue, is our waterways, the depth of our rivers. We grew up knowing that Demerara River is a deep river, but unfortunately it's not deep enough. We can only get maybe 6, 7, 8 meter draft. The new shore base can probably get about 9, 10 meter because they're doing constant dredging. The Berbice River, you might probably get that kind of depth at certain parts. So that too is an issue, because if you're going to bring in a vessel or a tanker with 1 million barrels of oil, then you have to draft. Or you have to build a platform out 10, 15 kilometers out and pipe it in. So those are some of the issues that are being considered before we move forward. It makes no sense we award it and then the company will not or might not be in a position to build a 30,000 refinery, sustain it without closing down. We can be able to supply the feedstock, and at the same time we can work with the logistics so that the project is feasible. So I think we will have to do a bit more assessment and to allow the companies to do their assessment as well. But it's something that the government is still inclined to have as an investment in Guyana, along with storage. Storage is a key part too. That's something that we're open to as a government, to look at storage, because storage capacity is important. Even with or without a refinery, storage is key, especially when you have war in the Ukraine and you have the Venezuela issue and you have many other issues that may arise in the future. You have to ensure that you're secure. Energy security, as the President would mention. So it's not only about the refinery, but storage as well too, the key component. And the gas to CARICOM, a number of CARICOM countries, yes, have already approached us to purchase gas from Guyana. But we will have to, I think it's a bit premature now to say who we can sell to and how much we can sell to them, because we are still in that process. And it will not be from, I don't think it will be from the initial project, that is the gas to energy project. Because the gas to energy project, the pipeline can probably carry a maximum of 120, 130 million cubic feet per day. We know that the 300 megawatts would use the 50 that is coming in for us. You might have a little remaining. But already, the President mentioned that we are looking at a second power plant, because the rate at which we're developing as a country, the demand for energy is increasing significantly. Significantly. We probably didn't envisage the rate at which the country is developing. But when you have 10, 12 new hotels coming on stream, you have 30-something thousand house lots awarded by the government, and those people build. We have many oil companies are building their headquarters here. When the 6 brand new hospitals come on stream, you will definitely need more power in the system. And then I am saying to you, and we are saying to you, that we want the Wales development area to be an industrial manufacturing park. And we want an alumina plant in Guyana at some point in time. That is demand, the demand for energy obviously will increase. So we may very well require far more than the 300 megawatts in a couple of years from now. So we have to start planning for the future. So I think it will be mostly surrounded around the second development, which is the conversation that Fulcrum, and I can probably speak to that question now, that Fulcrum is engaging with Exxon on, being facilitated by our team at the ministry. So they have held several meetings. I know they're engaging almost on a weekly basis, Exxon and Fulcrum, to ensure that we can work towards a plan of developing the remaining gas, whether it's from the Plume or the Haimara field, so that we can probably have a second development, gas development, at some point in time. We were told too that the long tail development will produce more gas than the other developments. Now that will answer the question on the Chevron and the Exxon arbitration issue, to say that no, it is not affecting our operation in Guyana. We have met with Exxon from day one, and that's the question we would have asked them with the COVIs. The president, vice president, myself met with them, and the answer was no, it will not affect Guyana's operation. So I don't, and to date, we have not seen any indication that the issue between them is affecting the operation. Already they're moving ahead with Hammerhead, and we have heard talks that long tail will come after that. Right? So no, it is not affecting the development in Guyana. So Hammerhead is moving forward, and maybe after Hammerhead, we will have probably long tail, which will yield more gas too. So with regards to who is financing, honestly, I'm not in a position to, not that I'm not in a position to say, but I don't think that has been disclosed fully as yet. So I don't think, not that I'm in a position, but I can't say at this point in time. But at some point in time, I'm sure Fulcrum will disclose that. But now, no. Not that I don't want to, I don't have the information. Coming back to the gas, once we develop that and we have excess gas, obviously our CARICOM partners will be the persons who we will turn to and speak to, because we have developed a good regional relationship through the chairmanship of our president at CARICOM. I think CARICOM has been re-energized and revitalized, and they're looking to Guyana now for support, especially with regards to the oil and gas sector. So I don't see us looking past our CARICOM sister countries before we go to other countries. So the possibility is, yes, once we move to the second development and gas is available. I say available because we will have to look at local consumption first before we can export. On the issue of audit, I think this question was asked of the Vice President too, and it's the same question. And as I mentioned at the previous press conference that we had, there is no different answer that I can give to what the Vice President would give at this press conference. Because one, is the same sector that we are managing. Two, we work as a team. So when we say things, we discuss it before we say it. So whatever the Vice President said at this press conference is the same thing the President will say, the same thing I will say, the same thing any other minister will say. So I noticed the last time the newspaper say, Minister Barrett said he cannot give a different answer from the Vice President. But they did not say this because it is the same sector we are managing, and we work together as a team. So there is no different answer I can give from the President or the Vice President or any other policy maker, because we all are aware of what are the issues and what are the decisions that we make. So yes, we know that the audits have been delayed, but the point is that we are doing the audits. Right? We are doing the audits. Many other audits were delayed. No audits were done from 2016 to 2020, not a single one, whether it's in the CGX, Demerara, Borbis, Kanuku, or whichever block. We started to push these audits and we're moving now to the third audits. So the commitment is there by the government and by the operator to ensure that we get this audit done. And I think that is important. And to be done properly, too. The question was asked about the countries looked at when we were modeling our framework. You know that the President of Ghana was here in Guyana, the Vice President of Ghana was here in Guyana. Vice President Barajagio went to Ghana himself. The President of our country went to Ghana. So we share a very good relationship with Ghana because they have a very mature oil and gas sector, right? Many of us probably never looked at their system, but they have a very mature system in which they manage the oil and gas sector. So that is just one country. Obviously, we would have looked at Trinidad and their model as being our CARICOM sister country. We would have looked at the US, Canada, of course. We've had a lot of help from Canada through the High Commission in crafting our policies and our framework to manage the sector. So those are some of the countries. Of course, the Middle East countries, we have a very good relationship with them. Qatar, the Emir of Qatar was here. The Minister of Energy was in Guyana. We had meetings too. And these were some of our main discussions as to how we move forward in building out our framework. And as you know, Qatar is probably the country when it comes to gas and gas development. And Qatar has been helping us with regards to that. We even have a consultant with us that was sent from Qatar. So they have been helping us too, along with a few other countries, to answer that question. Now, with regards to CGX, now there is no time frame as to our discussion and a decision for them, because as it is, they don't have a license, right? As it is, they don't have a license, and the quarantine block is basically with the state. So it's not us being in any hurry to give to CGX a renewal if they seek that, or whatever the case is. So there is no time frame, but it is a process whereby Cabinet has to make a decision. That is in our new Petroleum Activities Act. Not the minister, but Cabinet will make a final decision in it. Hopefully we'll do that very soon, because it's not something that we want to prolong either. But as it is now, there is no license. It has expired, and the quarantine block, like the Borbis and the Amara block, are back with the state. With regards to the gold smuggling issue and the New York issue and the visa, well, Dennis, hope you don't have any other information that I don't have. But as it is, yeah. As it is, no, sorry, it's not. I still have my my visa. I'm the holder, as you know, of a diplomatic passport. And to answer Marcel's question, Dennis, maybe you can help me, because you're the first person who reached out to me to ask if I was detained or if I was interrogated. I think that was ventilated. You did a good job. I must commend you, Dennis, for carrying the story. I even refer your story to many other media houses because it was accurately carried. There was no detention or interrogation. It was simply courtesy, as I mentioned before, being extended. We had conversation. Obviously, if we were walking through, we had conversation. The conversation, as I mentioned before, was on Guyana's development and what is happening. I'm the Minister of Natural Resources, so obviously questions were asked of the development within the natural resources sector. One, oil and gas, and two, yes, gold. Not anything specific to do with the Mohammed's issue, but generally, because it was out in the media that there was a sanction and Guyana is being looked at as a place where there is gold smuggling. So that was a scenario. I hope, Dennis, that I know, and I hope that my visa and my diplomatic passport is still valid. So I don't think that's a problem. And in fact, I was expedited in such a fast way, Marcel. I got out before my brother-in-law could have arrived at the airport to receive me. So there was no detention. I know sometimes you look for a headline, but it's not true. In fact, the U.S. ambassador made a statement, and I think that would have clarified the issue totally. The U.S. Embassy in Guyana made that. Now, with regards to the serious issue is the gold smuggling. Now, if you ask me if there is no gold smuggling in Guyana, or if it is not affecting declaration, I might tell you, you know what, I'm not in a position to say yes or to say no. Now, we know our country. We are all Guyanese here. We know our country. We know the resources that we have to man or monitor mining in Guyana. We know the terrain that we're dealing with. We know our borders, how it is, and not having enough resources to manage our borders are all issues. But what I can tell you is that what we do find out and what information is provided to us, we act on it. We act on it. That's what I can tell you for sure. If you ask me if gold is being smuggled through the formal channel out of Guyana, I would say no. It is not, because we have checked the system. I think Vice President was one of this press conference went through the process whereby CANU and GRA and the gold board and everybody would go to the dealers and weigh the gold and seal it, and then all of them will have to go to the airport and re-verify again. So there is a good system in place. There is a good system in place. And then the refinery would have to write to the gold board to confirm the weight and everything. So if you ask me if it is being through the formal channel, I will say no, because we have a very good system in place to export gold through our formal channel throughout the country. Right? So I will say no to the formal process, that is a foolproof process, and because of the amount of agencies and people involved in it, it's difficult for people to conspire and to do anything untowards. With regards to us monitoring the interior, we're improving on that. Now we're going to use drones, we're going to use body cam on our mines officers, because honestly, we have to depend on the human factor. We have to depend on our mines officers when they go into the field. If I receive a report from the media that there is illegal mining in Etrembang, I have to send a team from GGMC. When they go there and they bring back a report to me, I have to trust my officers. Right? I have to trust what they say to me, because I can't be in every part of the country, or Mr. Dennison can be in every part of the country. So if there are leakages, we are working towards cutting it out. We are working towards eradicating all these small illegalities that may be contributing to it. And that's why we put a notice in the newspaper too, that workers must not be paid in gold. Because when workers are paid in gold, then the gold may very well not end up through a formal channel, which is not what we want as a country. That is why I met with all the goldsmiths and the jewelry establishment in Guyana, because they have to buy gold from the Guyana Gold Board and nowhere else. So we are tightening up on all these slack ends. We are plugging all the loopholes. These are issues that have been with us for a long time, but I believe once there is the will, we will fix it. So I think those are some, or if not all, the issues that I would have touched on. The appraisal program will continue, right? I think so. Yeah. All right, so that engagement with the technical team and Exxon is ongoing, so we can provide that answer to you. I may not be able to give you now, or I don't want to give you an inaccurate figure either. All right, so I think those were the questions asked. Thank you. Oh, and the depletion of oil reserve. Yeah. Oh, yes. The last question I was asked is if the ramped-up production will actually extract or produce all the oil in the Liza 1, Liza 2 field faster than the license. Now, it could work both ways. It could work both ways, to be quite honest. And now, at this time in the history of the world, I must say, ramping up production and producing the oils in a reservoir at a faster time than you can is actually good for a country, because it comes back to the window that's available for fossil fuel to survive and the price that will be available. Because when demand goes down for fossil, everybody will still be producing. So if you have this large supply of fossil but a small demand, the price will go down so much that it will make no sense for countries to produce oil and gas anymore. Because if demand goes down and supply is still there, obviously the price will be nothing. Like in a few years back, it went down to what, $10, $20? Right? It will be like that at some point in time. So if we can get it out while the oil price is $80, $85, then we should be commending the government and the sector for doing that for the country. So why I say it could go both ways is because while these reservoirs are maturing, the operators are learning more of the reservoir too. It is like that. So you may very well get more out of a reservoir than was determined earlier, or you can get less. And then again, we are still doing exploration. So there may very well be new wells that are tied in to the developments that exist right now. Because if you have a discovery close to the Liza field, obviously you have to tie in that well into the production from the Liza vessel. You can't take it to another development. It makes no sense because of the cost of the infrastructure, subsea equipment. So it can go both ways. That's why I say it can go both ways. Yes, it can be, you can finish before the 20 years, or it can even go beyond. Because as reservoir mature, you can get more out of it. And then as we have more discoveries, we can add those wells to the existing development too. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take the next round of questions. I recognize this young man here, and then this guy over here with the black shirt. Not by the ministry's demand, but by the request of the videographer, the video team. If you could please stand when you ask the question for the purposes of those reviewing online.
John Bryan, TVG. Can you confirm what is the status of the GT arbitration process? There are reports that the government and Linseca had reached an agreement on the third member of the arbitration board. And mention was made during Mr. Gobodan's presentation about the revolving fund. How many have benefited from the fund, and can you say if this program is likely to be expanded to other sectors?
Thank you for that. The young man across here, and then we come back on this side.
Good afternoon, Sheriff Belger with Kaiser News. I just have two quick questions. Does the Ministry of Natural Resources have at hand how much decommissioning fund has been deducted by the operator so far, and where's that fund? And recently we've seen Exxon hired one of the world's largest cargo planes to bring in some exploration and drilling equipment. Did they share with the government the costs that they paid for that cargo plane, and will the Natural Resource Ministry work on giving us or making public some of the costs that Exxon pays for, like, the helicopters? I know the Vice President says that the government can't share anything, but the big money costs, like helicopters and other lease fees, like supply boats and so forth.
Sorry, you're saying you want the cost for the helicopters?
No, how much they pay the lease costs and so forth for the, they pay for the rental of the helicopters to drop off and so forth.
For each drop?
Huh?
For each drop?
No, just like a broad figure. Like how much they spend quarterly, annually, and so forth.
But you do, okay, I think we need to probably, Bobby, have another session where we explain a bit of the process so that you can have an understanding as to the operations, and then the cost centers related to those operations can be further expanded upon. And then the exact issue that you're asking, you get a better grasp of it. So it's not a case that they can't provide information, but it's a very detailed process. It's not just like a taxi drop. All right, there's a host of costs involved in the investment agreement and these kind of things as well. So probably, Bobby, we got a better session on that. But we got a question, no problem. Thank you for that.
No problem.
All right, we back on this one side, this young lady in the green. Sorry, if it's not too much trouble, not, you prefer not to stand. Okay, perfect.
Minister Barrett, you mentioned that Vice President Barajak hosts weekly press conference to answer questions on the oil and gas sector. However, he often directs sector-related questions to you as the minister. Given this, would you consider hosting like a monthly press briefing? Also, last month a tender was issued for the... My second question. A tender was issued for the procurement of data management services for Guyana exploration and production data. Can you provide more detail on this tender?
Sorry, which one of the tenders? Who issued it? The oil company or the ministry?
Ministry of Natural Resources.
Okay, perfect, no problem. This young lady here.
Good afternoon, Mr. Anas Williams with Kaiser News. Firstly, you would have mentioned, well, given a better understanding of the 240 million issue. If this is not resolved, have you considered what it will cost Guyana if the case has to head to arbitration? Secondly, ExxonMobil has said that they're treating the produced water and they normally provide that information to the EPA. Can you say when the ministry plans to have systems in place to independently monitor this? And also, can you say how soon does your ministry plan to procure independent meters to verify Exxon's production? And lastly, can you provide us an update on when the documents for the gas energy project will be made public?
Thank you very much, Ms. Williams. Any other questions at this point? Ms. Bagot and then Mr. King.
Do I have to stand? Minister, earlier you said that Exxon is not using loans, so there's no interest rate that is charged to Guyana on that. But sir, for the record, could you say if there is a cost of financing that is attached to the company's equity contribution? And secondly, Exxon previously highlighted the lack of capacity at the ministry to manage the oil and gas operations. Does your ministry see the need for a petroleum commission to be established with more projects coming on stream? And finally...
Sorry, Ms. Bagot, if you made us thing. You said Exxon said this?
Yes, I have the story. I can share it with you if you'd like after this.
Who Exxon said this?
This is Mr. Routledge. He had a press conference and he was talking about the new PSAs and government's lack of capacity to manage the new provisions and so on.
I'd be happy if you could share the information with us and we'll take it from there, all right?
No problem. Do you want me to pull that up for you right now?
No, let me see the context under which he said it.
No problem.
And then we'll take it from there, all right?
No problem. And can you say how much oil has been produced to date from the Liza 1 and 2 projects?
Any other question at this stage? Kimo? And then we'll...
Thank you. Minister, you mentioned the long-tail project, which is a project which would follow the Hammerhead project. Could you talk about the envisioned potential timeline for that and the quantity of production of oil and gas that's envisioned as well? Thank you. And if you would give a bit of color on that project.
Thanks for that. Ms. Marcel? As I mentioned, we will have some information that we'll share with you at the end, in addition to some additional information that we will provide after.
It was just for clarity on the auction. I think you've given it, but it was so overwhelming. I'm not sure if I missed it.
You're speaking of the bid room?
Yeah.
Oh, not the auction, the bid room.
No, the auction with the 6.
The auction was in the mining industry.
No,
The bid wrong.
The oil.
Yeah, the bid wrong. Okay,
Are
good.
we getting this thing? The bid wrong. The 6 companies. You said that they've all indicated intent to sign the signing bonus. Is that what you said? That all 6 have said that they are willing to give the signing bonus? That's the clarity I seek, and to know if the proposal from, which was it, Petronas and the other companies that were ahead, are they still the only company that is that far, or has the others caught up to that?
Have any other questions at this time?
All right.
No other questions? All right, well, we'll take it there.
All right, so Marissa, let me clarify for your, on the bid wrong, what I said is that all 6 companies would have indicated that they're in a position now to pay the signing bonus, which is required upon signing the PSA. So we are not, I just want to make it clear, we're not going to sign any agreement with any of those companies if they're not in the position to pay the signing bonus at the time of signing. And all of them have indicated that they're in a position now to do so. And we would have mentioned that Petronas, Total, and Qatar would have advanced, and they were slowed down a bit, or they were kept waiting a bit by the others because we wanted one PSA for all the companies. So the companies now, they're basically in the same position where they would have received the PSA, the revised PSA. And they're reviewing that with the possibility of signing very soon. Some may sign before some, but it will be the same PSA, right? So they are in the position to pay the signing bonus, yes. All 6 at that level right now, as it is, including the local company. I think maybe that's what you're trying to find out too. Okay, okay. Including the local company too, because I think they're in a position now that they have partners to move forward. Kimal, with regards to the other project, it was just hinted, so there is nothing concrete about it. So I don't want us to jump ahead of Hammerhead. So there is just an indication that that might be the other project. It could very well change based on their appraisal program or priorities. Right? So right now I think the focus should be on Hammerhead because that will be the next project that we will have to evaluate and assess in order to issue a production license. Right? We'll give more details as time progresses, but there is nothing concrete. That may change, right, based on appraisal program and what priorities are. On the issue of, well, unfortunately, I've not seen this article with Alistair saying that the ministry lacks capacity to manage the oil and gas sector. If he did say that, he's probably speaking about a particular issue or part of the agreement, because I have a good working relationship with Alistair. Knowing Alistair, he's a true professional. You would not, I don't think a man of his stature would utter the words that the Ministry of Natural Resources don't have capabilities to manage the sector. So I don't want to comment because I haven't seen it and I haven't spoken to Alistair last couple of days either. But I want to believe that he will not say something like that. So I won't comment on it either. You would speak with, you will show PS and it's the same position. I don't think that is context to ask about the Petroleum Commission. Right? So sometimes you got to be careful of the comments that we make too. I mean, at the same time you want us to be fair and honest, you got to be fair and honest with us too. Because that should not be used as a context to ask when we are going to put the Petroleum Commission in place. It's implicating the head of Exxon in Guyana, actually, which is not right to do. And also, it's derogatory to the staff who are here from the Petroleum Unit in the Ministry of Natural Resources, who have been doing a wonderful job. Young professionals have taken the sector to where it is right now, knowing that it's a new sector to us and we are all learning, and yet we can be used as a model country when it comes to managing the oil and gas sector. I think a statement like that too would be very derogatory to our team at the Ministry of Natural Resources. So if you want to ask of the Petroleum Commission, I can say that our position remains the same. The Vice President mentioned it, I mentioned it in the Parliament when I was speaking, that we will have a Petroleum Commission at some point in time. If you ask me when, I can't tell you tomorrow, I can't tell you next month, but what I can tell you is that we will have a Petroleum Commission in place at some time soon. But again, the Petroleum Commission will basically be doing what we are doing at the Petroleum Unit at the Ministry of Natural Resources. I don't think they'll be doing anything different from what we are doing now. As a matter of fact, they might probably, a commission like that might be slower in decision making than the policymakers making decisions with regards to how we advance this sector, taking into consideration that we have a limited time frame and a closing window. So we have to look at the advantages and disadvantages of everything. It might be nice to say, oh, we should put a Petroleum Commission in place. Yeah, it might be nice to say that. But what are the advantages and what are the disadvantages? Do we really need that now? Isn't the Petroleum Unit at the Ministry of Natural Resources functioning effectively? Haven't we managed the sector well over the last few years, building out the framework, putting the legislative framework in place too, having a new model Petroleum Activities Act, having a local content legislation, having a new PSA in place, having improvements of production, license, environmental permits, and putting all the monitoring capabilities in place. I don't see a commission doing anything different from what the Petroleum Unit is doing at the Ministry of Natural Resources. But not to write it off, as I said, we have made a commitment that we will have that at some point in time. But more than likely, I mean, we got to be real. I like being real. That more than likely is these same gentlemen and ladies who you see here who are managing the unit will be under the Petroleum Commission, because we can't throw them away and bring a set of new staff and say, you go, we will staff the commission with these people. It will be the same people who are doing the job right now, because these are the people who are being trained. These are the people who are qualified. These are the people who are doing the work all the time. So should we just start a Petroleum Commission and say we don't need you anymore? We can't. They're young Guyanese, professionals. So more than likely it's the same unit, the same staff that will be at the Petroleum Commission too, doing the same thing. So it's not a magic fix that if we have a Petroleum Commission in place, what new will happen? What different will happen in the sector that is not happening right now? We have total transparency and accountability. We have a good way of sharing information with the media and everybody else like we're doing right now. I don't really see a difference, a major difference between a commission or the Petroleum Unit at the Ministry of Natural Resources at this point in time when we need to make firm, quick, decisive decisions with regards to advancing the sector. And I think that has been a plus for us, especially with the pace at which the sector has developed and the benefits that we are reaping as a country too. Maybe a commission would act a bit slow, I don't know. But maybe I think they'll probably act a bit slow because of bureaucracy and everything else that's involved in it. The interest, somebody asked of the interest, I think Bobby explained that. There is no interest. You were assuming if there was something else. Well, I think Bobby mentioned that too. If the companies take a loan and there is interest, it goes to the cost bank. But there is no loans. The money is coming from equity. Or you ask if there's any interest on equity. No, there's no interest on equity. No interest is charged to the cost bank. bottom line. No interest is charged to the cost bank as of today. The question on arbitration and costs, we are not there. We are not there. I don't want to assume or to procrastinate. We're hoping that this matter can be resolved amicably between the two parties and that we don't reach the stage of arbitration. If we got to go to the stage of arbitration, we'll have to do it because it is $214 million US we're talking of. And if it will cost us...
No, he's answering the other question.
No, I think somebody else asked that question too. Right. And if it will cost us 1/10 of that, it makes perfect sense because it's for $214 million you would write off from the cost bank. So if you got, I'm just saying, if you got to spend 10 or 5 or 3 or 2, I don't know what's the cost. No, none of us know as yet. But I'm just saying, then it makes sense because you're saving $214 million US. So if it gets to that stage, we will have to offset the cost. Let me see if there is any, on the issue of the independent meters and production and monitoring, that is why we did the presentations here today too. And I didn't just come and speak and field the questions. We wanted to show you what actually exists, like the mineral mapping, like the sawmills, like the forestry concession, to show you that these are all public information. You can go and see who owns a mining block in Mazaruni by just a click of a mouse. In some countries, you can't do that. You don't know who owns a mining block. In Guyana, everything is public. Production, we have a dashboard, as was explained and it was shown to you. It wasn't live, but it was shown to you, that we can actually monitor production at 10 minutes interval. At 10 minutes interval, we can monitor the production. Before a tanker is offload, before a tanker is filled, GRA has to be there, GNBS has to be there. Without, and I'm saying it again, I said it in Parliament, I say it again, without GNBS and GRA, no crude can be offloaded from the FPSO into any tanker. Without GNBS and without GRA, it cannot happen. And I think Trent went through the entire process, and you would see a number of safeguards to ensure that we monitor what is happening offshore. Because the whole issue of having an independent meter is the monitoring. You want us to know what is happening offshore. But we're telling you we have about 5, 6 different layers to monitor what is happening offshore, and that we control the meter, because GNBS, if they're not there, the meter can't flow. It can't turn on. So we have systems in place to monitor what is happening offshore. Sometimes we buy into the street gaff. And I was in a particular area, and a man was asking me, what if Exxon run a different pipeline from an FPSO and they'll carry it somewhere else? Sometimes we buy into all these street gaff, as I call them. These things are not just, it's not possible. This is a complex development that we're talking about. And I wish if the media can be given an opportunity to go offshore and to see the massive infrastructure development and investment that is offshore Guyana. You see, because it's not here, we can't see it. But it is not as easy as running a pipeline. It don't work like that. It is computerized. Whatever we see there flows through the computer. It can't be manipulated or changed. Right? So there's a good system of monitoring what is happening offshore, either by the dashboard or a physical presence on board with GRA, with EPA, with GNBS. And we are training some staff now that will be on the FPSO too. That will be full-time on the FPSO. Some Ministry of Natural Resources staff are being trained currently by SBM that will be offshore too, to monitor everything, not only production, but everything that is happening offshore. It's the same thing with water. EPA ensures that they go and they monitor it. EPA goes out there probably every week. You see, these are things that I don't think the media and the Guyanese public know. They believe that Exxon alone is running this operation offshore, and Guyana don't check on them. But EPA goes there every week. GNBS and GRA must be there before they offload. We have a link to the fiber optic cable that we can see real time what is the production. EPA checks the water before it is discharged to ensure that it is treated to international standard before it is discharged back into the ocean. All these things are done by us. But maybe because we don't talk much about it, and it's not being highlighted as much as it should, people don't understand that we play a major role in monitoring what is happening offshore too. The other issues, I think, the data repository. The advertisement is to establish our own data repository in Guyana. Presently, we have our data in Houston being held by other companies. This is like our seismic data and everything that's being held by other companies. We want to set up a data repository in Guyana. Again, for a country that has been producing for 4 years or so, this is ambitious. Because many countries producing oil don't have a data repository in their own country after 4 or 5 years, or even think about having one. After 4 years, we are already moving towards establishing our own data repository in country. That we can have it here and our own people manage it, analyze it, and it is money making. It's a very lucrative investment or assignment that we're taking on. Because it's not only spending money to set up the data repository, it is about getting our people to work there and to sell that data to companies that will come and seek to do exploration in Guyana. It's worth a lot of money. So it's like an investment, right? And then it's for our people to manage it and not for our data to be elsewhere. From the bid round alone, companies had to pay what, $2 million? Companies had to pay $2 million US just to access the data on those ministry sites, of which we got a part of it, right? But if we can have it in country, it means that we will make that kind of money when we sell our data, because our data is in demand. Everybody wants the data from the Guyana Basin. And the other issues that were raised, one was a monthly press conference. I will not commit myself, but we will try to do it as regular as possible. Right? Because you already have the Vice President doing weekly. Right? The Vice President deals with oil and gas at the policy level, and he said to contact Vic when you have some certain day-to-day issues with the operations and all that. That's what we're doing here right now. Right? And many of you know how to make contact with me, except the person who said that I blocked them or deleted them. Right? But I don't want to say it on camera why, but I think it was a bit unethical of the person, that's why I had to. But if you want data information, and we have a press release, right? I prepare a press release, our team prepare a press release on oil and gas, and I send it to you. I expect you to publish it too. You mustn't ask me for data that you want alone, and then publish that alone. You must also publish what we provide too. That's only fair. And that was one of the problems I had personally. I'm saying it now because it was reported to the Vice President. I blocked the person. But when I asked the person some information they wanted, I said, but I sent you a press release. I never saw it published. Oh, the publisher didn't want to publish it. So it makes no sense then. You got to get to a win-win situation. Whatever relationship we have in sharing information, it got to be two ways. You can't just want what you want, and when we give you information, you don't want to publish it. It don't work like that. Like I said, we got to be fair with each other, and we got to be. If you expect me to be honest with you, which I am, I expect you to be honest with me too, and to help us too. Right? At the end of the day, regardless of what this our country we're talking about, and we're developing our country. With regards to the cost of the plane and the helicopter and all that, I think PS you would arrange for probably to deal with. I think the media, we need to do that. With your concurrence, we will arrange a workshop. Not a 3-hour workshop, Marcel. I see you looking at me. A workshop, because we have nothing to hide. I'm saying it clearly in front of you and in front of everybody. We have nothing to hide in the oil and gas sector. But it's just the time we don't have to divulge all the information, and sometimes we don't have it at hand. But I'm sure if you need those kind of information, we can sit down with the team, because I'm the minister. I'm not the technical people. I'm not the finance people. I'm not the engineers, them. We have the team here. So we can arrange it with the technical people, and we can do a workshop with the media so you understand the sector better. I think if you understand the sector better, it will be good for the reporting. Because when you put certain derogatory things in the newspaper and you think that you're beating down the PPP civic government, you're not really beating down the PPP civic government, you're beating down your own country. Your own country, because these news go internationally, and people see these things. And all of us here are Guyanese. We don't want to go out there and people say, oh, Guyana is a waste of time, Guyana this, Guyana that. They won't say PPP government or the minister alone, they will say Guyana and Guyanese. So we got to be careful of what we report and how we report it. If somebody do something wrong, you have all right to do it. I'm not saying no. So on the decommissioning, I think Bobby went through the decommissioning, the cargo plane, you see the airport and all these things, the helicopter and all that, and the monthly, the expenses, we can arrange that. And we can do it next week. We don't have to wait till next year. We can do it next week. Like I said, there's nothing to hide. Right? On the revolving fund, I think to date we have about 80-something persons or companies, or 54. 54 companies or entities or individuals that would have benefited from the revolving fund, which is really helping the sector. And I'll give you one example. I had a meeting with Porica Sawmills recently, and they benefited from the revolving fund. They're now building a big, massive complex to do doors and cupboards and windows. And then the other company is doing a factory to do shingles. These things will be done right in Porica, at Porica Sawmill, and I think Sukram or one of these other companies, I'm not sure. But they have already started to invest in that. Right? And we have seen many, many people doing that. That's why we have over 100 new sawmills right now. That would have helped in a way. We have over 70-something new lumber yards around the country. Right? So it has helped a lot. If you ask if we're going to extend it, I'm going to tell you there's a revolving fund and it is supposed to revolve. Right? We don't want it to stop revolving, because in the past you had a revolving fund that did not revolve. That's why the name says revolving fund. So it means that people are supposed to start paying back so that others could access it too. So at no point in time it should be totally depleted. Right? That's the purpose of having a revolving fund. The gas to energy arbitration process, I think that is being advanced, but I want to say that is not affecting the work on site. Right? I've seen an article thinking or trying to insinuate that that might affect the work on site. I want to say to you clearly that it's not affecting the work that is ongoing. Right? The process it has to take its course. Hopefully we can do it in an amicable manner, as we always prefer to do it. But the bottom line that I want to say to you is that it is not affecting the project. The project is moving forward. And our application at the U.S. Exim Bank, I think we would have fulfilled almost all the requirements necessary. And they have, I think it's this month or next month, they have the next quarterly meeting or something that our matter will go there. So we're hoping that from all indication, that it will be successful. I think those were... Oh yeah, Lisa 1 and Lisa 2. I think we had it there, right? 254? Yeah, it's like 200. We can provide a figure. That's what I'm saying, 254, not 254,000 barrels. I'm telling you, the big figure. No, I know what you're asking. Yeah. You mean the total production from then to now? Yes. That's what I'm saying, 200 and something billion. Million, sorry. You're right. We have the figure where we can provide to you. Right? We can break it down and give you two. I actually have it here, but it's to find it right now. But I can give you afterwards. We have it by FPSO. Right? I don't answer them. All right, so it's three things. One is the gas energy project. I think we would have issued a number of, or we have a number of agreements that we have made public. I think we had a commitment that at some point in time that we will release it, but I am not sure. But let me just make it clear with regards to the gas energy project. And same thing, Marcel, with the third person. The Ministry of Natural Resources is supporting the project. The project falls under Office of the President, right? To be quite honest with you. So, Office of the Prime Minister, sorry, Prime Minister. So the documents and everything is in the custody of the Prime Minister's office and not the Ministry of Natural Resources. Because I believe there's a misconception that the Ministry of Natural Resources is managing this project. We offer the technical support at the starting, especially when there was engagement with Exxon and getting these things done, but the Prime Minister's office is responsible for the project. That is why the budgetary allocation goes under the Prime Minister's budget and not the Ministry of Natural Resources. So it might be good to, honestly, I can't answer the question, the third person. Prime Minister would be in a better position to do that. Honestly, I don't know who's the third person. Not that I don't want to tell you. I don't know who's the third person. And the documents too, I think we would have released quite a few. But if there are more, I'll speak with Prime Minister to see what can be released. Because I know you've asked this question several times before too. Right? And myself, my general feeling is that I have no issue with cooperating or providing any truthful information to any agency or anybody or any country. Right? I have nothing to hide, as a matter of fact. I'm open to everything. And if it's something to do with the improvement of Guyana and how the sector could be improved, I'm always willing to open suggestion ideas. So I don't take these things personally. Right? I know it's because the position that I hold, right? Because of the position, sometimes it comes under different scrutiny because of the nature of the ministry too and the size of the ministry. That the ministry manages oil and gas, it manages mining, it manages forestry, and to an extent we assist the EPA on the environmental side too. So it comes with the territory. So I don't take things personally. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. Thank you very much, members of the head table, presenters. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. This brings us to the end of the session. As I mentioned, I'm available to have follow-up conversations and also any particular clarification needed. And do feel free to contact the ministry via the portal if you have any follow-up questions needed after today. Thank you.